grid is live. Initiate.
Excellent!
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Bogus.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
My name's Norman Bates.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. I'm in, Mom.
Merry Christmas, movie house! We came, we saw, we kicked his ass.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
Oh, well. Let me go in and say hi.
Hail to the king, baby.
Well, welcome back to a brand new episode of the PJ Campbell Show. I am your host, PJ Campbell. With me, as always, is my good friend, Patrick Hogue. How you doing, man?
As always, for the second time, as always.
Well, you know what? If this is going to be us, as always.
That's the plan. That's the hope. That's
I
the
mean,
dream.
assuming that we don't get canceled before this. Wait, no one can cancel us
about to
because
say,
we
like-
run the ship.
Yeah. And, like, if we end up just hating each other and just, like, forming this feud and this rivalry, like, at that point, yeah, we'll cancel. But until then, we're just going to be riding high, baby.
Yeah, I mean, we do our best, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the first episode. I think we had a lot of fun doing it. At least I did. It was fine.
It's about a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, well, you know.
You know, like, it's not Friends ratings, but, you know, it's like second season of Cheers. That didn't take off until, like, what? Season 8?
Season 9, 10, 11.
10, yeah.
You know, when it got canceled.
They really had to get their footing first.
Yeah, it took
before,
them a little while.
you know,
MASH,
it
same
caught
thing,
on.
obviously.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that we got this NPR. Like, I don't listen to NPR. Is this how they talk? Like,
I have no idea, but I'm glad that we're here.
So, you being the host, what are we doing for this episode? Now that we're already off the rails and going
Do you
crazy?
think I ever have a plan?
I hope so.
I mean,
As-
I just kind of make it up as I go. I learned from Indiana Jones growing up, so, you know, it only makes sense.
That's a
But how's-
horrible, like, model to...
It's the best kind of model for podcasting that I can think of. But, you know, how's your week been?
That's been good. You know, the lead up to Christmas, the anxiety of figuring out what to get people to go home and just kind of be very self-reflective of who you are in this Christmas time and what truly matters to you, and, you know, what kind of things do you appreciate, like the weather, the snow, what kind of movies do you like to watch? Like, I don't know. How have you been?
Are you saying that the holidays are stressful?
Yeah, you know, I didn't want to bring negativity to, like, this episode, but it just, you know, I want to appreciate the Yuletide carols, but sometimes you get a pumpkin log in your...
That's fair.
This is a bad metaphor. We're just going to hit the eject button right there.
I'm glad that you asked how my week is going. I've had an all right week, you know, living life and dealing with the holidays and stuff, but I had something happen this week, whatever
That's
it is.
something you should only talk about with your doctor.
Not that kind of something.
Gotcha. Okay.
But so I had a family friend who was in town, and we were like, we'll all go to Disneyland. And so we booked a hotel room.
As one does. Yeah.
Yeah, as one does. We went down there for 2 days. We were like, we don't want to really drive down there both days. We might as well stay down there.
Fist bump Mickey.
So, of course, you know, you spend a lot of time at Disney, and you're usually there pretty late. And so we were like, all right, no problem. I'd been talking to the hotel all day. Like, I let them know, hey, we're coming in. Don't worry. Like, it's going to be late. We're all at Disney. So we leave the park around 10:30, 10:45.
Yeah.
We get down to the hotel. It's about 11:45 once, like, you get through the car, get through the parking, like, doing all the things that you do to
Totally
leave.
exhausted, ready for death.
And the hotel tells us that they have gotten rid of our room. They had oversold the hotel.
They took a bulldozer and just removed that singular room from the building.
It was a very
doesn't
strange
exist.
feeling, and I was like,
Yeah.
dude, it's midnight almost.
Yeah.
And you're telling me I can't go to bed?
And you gave them, like, you know, a heads up of, hey, it's going to be a little later.
Yeah, and that was my conversation with the guy when I got there. I was a little confused, and I was kind of like, this seems odd.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've been talking to you guys all day. You all knew I was coming in.
There's a process here that we followed.
Right. And it
Should
just
go
seemed
well.
kind of strange. And he even put in there, he's like, yeah, I looked at the comments, and it said you had confirmed you're coming in. I'm not sure why we overbooked and didn't, like, canceled your reservation. I was like, yeah, that's a really good question, because I'm really tired right now.
Yeah,
like, I'd
it
really
is,
like to go to bed.
Let me look at my watch. Midnight, please.
Yeah,
Love of
so,
God.
you know, it all ended up working out, but it was just, like, a weird situation. And I was like, well, what a way to kick off, like, the holiday season, where it was like, I went to a hotel, and by the way, sir, your room isn't here.
Yeah, but it's like, if you watch any holiday movie, it's not just like, all happiness and cheer. There is always that scene of like the Home Alone waking up late when you have to get to the airport, everyone freaking out, or it wouldn't be the holiday season without an entire day of stress, frustration, finally getting to a hotel at midnight and then realizing that you don't have a place to sleep.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
Jimmy
just what
Stewart
Christmas
does.
is.
Jimmy Stewart did try to kill himself in It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, he stands on that bridge and thinks about it until he goes and saves
Dude,
Clarence.
you just took it to a whole new level.
We were talking about dark. I didn't mean it any other way. But
suicide.
oh, what about Lethal Weapon? If we're going to talk about Christmas movies, doesn't Martin Riggs put a gun in his mouth?
Again, like I'm just trying to find like movies
I'm
that
just saying.
apply a bit more to our lives. Like
You said dark at holidays, and that is exactly what I was thinking of.
you're not incorrect.
I mean, John McClane kills a guy and then says,
Again.
now I have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho.
All of these movies involve murderers and like criminals.
Does
and
that say
hostages.
something about me?
A little.
I'm a little worried.
I'm actually kind of concerned to be in this room right now.
I think it would be a really good idea if I just talk to you about this. Like, you could almost be my therapist. Maybe that's what this podcast would be good for.
So unqualified. A podcast like a whole podcast dedicated to just sharing emotional grief and like looking at the comments to see like how to deal with it. Yeah, that'll go over well. And
Hey, some people do that, man. Like
a good
Brianne
point.
Chandler did the film therapy thing, which was really, really cool.
Renege, is that the word?
You ring?
I take back what I said previously.
Oh, that's fair.
Because it's like, that's a good point. It's a good point.
I mean, and now I think Kevin Smith was working on something similar at IMDb or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if that ever actually went anywhere, but I mean, that was kind of cool.
My man's always working on something now that he's, healthy and in shape.
Dude,
and
have you been paying attention to his Instagram?
He posted something on Instagram like wearing one of his old suits, and it's like a parachute on him. And I'm like, I'm someone who's like relatively in shape, and even I'm like,
Just like I'm relatively A-shape, it's the same thing.
Hey, you are a sexy beast.
Oh, thank you.
But regardless, like, good for him.
Yeah,
Like,
it's great.
That's a thing that like you can totally see like after the heart attack, like, oh man, I really hope this leads to good things, and it like just could like reverberate backwards the other way, and like to see it like go the direction it has is like kind of inspirational and kind of like super really like inspiring that this guy like took control over like a major aspect of his life.
I've had to
him.
actually do that a little bit. His kind of has forced me to see it in the same way because, last year my dad had like a massive heart attack.
Yeah.
And it like involved a 5-way bypass. Like it was a big deal. And I'm an only child. I literally am the only person in my family outside of my mom and my dad.
Yeah.
Which meant that I was going to be the one who like would have to deal with the situation when mortality became very clear to me early on because of something like that. And I was like, oh man, maybe I should. And then Kevin Smith had his heart attack. And I've looked up to Kevin Smith forever. And I was like, you know what, man? Like I really need to focus on that. I need to not eat as bad as I have been, like going to the gym. And it's not always easy, but
No.
I try my best at least. It's a thing. But I really applaud him because he's turned his life around a lot. Like he doesn't look anything really like I remember him looking like. Even as the earliest at Clerks, he looks so different. And he posted a picture, I think it was today or a couple of days ago, where it was a picture of him in high school and he only weighs 15 pounds more than he did then.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
Well, and it's like what he does a really good job at is when he posts about it and the like kind of stories he'll put with every picture is saying like, this wasn't easy. This was like, this took a lot of effort. This took a lot of work. This took a lot of self-reflection, but I cannot tell you how much it's been worth it and how much better I feel and how like there are people along the way that helped me and just showing that like this, it shouldn't be easy, but you can do it. And, like finding that balance to be like, oh yeah, it's not a walk. It's not saying like it's a walk in the park or not saying like this is the hardest thing I had to do. He's really good at kind of laying it out there of like, I looked at my life and these are the steps I took. And I don't know, like the way he's presented it has been really great at you can make a change in your life. Man, this got really inspirational.
It really did, and I mean that's perfect for the holiday season, so I'm all about it. I have to say too, if as long as it means that we actually get moose jaws, I'm all about it because I am dying to get moose jaws at this point. And I know that's a controversial opinion because not everyone likes Tusk, and most people don't like Yoga Hosers.
Yeah,
but I enjoy both. I'm not going to necessarily say that they're really good movies. I would argue Tusk is really close to a good movie. Yoga hosers not so much, but I really enjoy them.
I think that's a good way of putting it, especially for Tusk, is that I was pumped for it. Like like again, for like, I like weird stuff. I like
You know.
Yeah, as a cat licks my head earlier. That's weird without context on an audio platform, but there's a cat sitting next to me who fancies licking
There's
my
no
head.
cat there.
That is,
You
now
see cat people.
You're just making me sound crazy as I talk about me liking kind of the Walrus movie. No, but like that's a movie that's kind of in line with my sensibilities. And like what you said, it's close to a good movie, but it's not a good movie.
No.
And
But it's a good creature feature.
even kind of.
Just as a creature feature. I'm not saying it's like high art, but as a creature feature, I really enjoy it.
If it's and like that's, if you put like kind of like the lens of like it's B movie, it's kind of intentionally being a little, but we know that Kevin Smith has done better, and so like I'm curious as to if he would make Moose Jaws, because I'm very curious as to what his next movie would be with this kind of life experience now under his belt, of him like seeing what else do I want to put in the world.
He recently brought it up. Like, he's doing Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and then he's supposed to do Moose Jaws after, at least according to what he said. I mean, he's always got 10 projects in development at every time.
But, like,
so.
especially after, like, this moment in his life of, like, what is that next... Because, creative endeavors are always inspired by, like, life experience. So what is a creative endeavor inspired by a man who really just, like, kind of reinvented himself in his life?
And I think he's also found a lot of passion and a lot of reinvention in just going up to shoot a lot of the CW shows. Because he worked on Flash and Supergirl.
Yeah.
And he's found work on the Goldbergs, and he's done a lot of stuff like that, which is really, really cool. And I like his work on the CW shows. I mean, it's not asking a ton of him, obviously, because you're coming into a show that's already very much established and things like that.
But it doesn't feel cynical in any way. It feels very earnest of like, I like this stuff.
Well,
like I want to contribute as much as I can.
He directed one of the best episodes of The Flash, and I don't religiously watch these shows like I used to.
Yeah.
But he did this episode where Barry was lost in the Speed Force that was really, really incredible a couple of years ago. And it was arguably one of the best episodes of the series, and it actually had some of Grant Gustin's best acting in the series. And that's what, like, Kevin Smith, he is so good at doing stuff like that. I mean, do you remember Red State? Did you see Red State?
I did not see Red State.
Red State was the movie where I realized that he could really reinvent himself and do something really, really cool, because it was so different than anything he had done at that time, because he hadn't done Yoga Hosers. He hadn't done... I mean, we'd only known him by the Jersey series at that point. And so Red State comes out, and it's like this almost thriller-esque horror film about cults in the middle of America, and you're like, what is going on?
It looked very textual in a way that, like, the rest of his movies are very, like, kind of pop culturally textual. This one looked very humanistic.
Well, and Michael Parks
without seeing it,
gave a career-defining performance
he was
in
Tusk,
that movie.
Right? Like,
he was the guy who captured Justin Long.
The kooky fellow.
But then you had John Goodman and Kevin Pollak.
I remember seeing the cast being like,
yeah.
Oh, damn, all right.
It's really, really quite good, and I really recommend it for people who haven't seen it. It's quite a good film. I mean, arguably, in my opinion, one of his better films, and maybe his most well-directed, because it's just so drastically different than everything else he's done.
You could see, like, a different kind of muscle, like, stretch. Side note, do you know it's what I think is one of the best episodes of TV directed by a big-time director?
Answer.
It's on CSI. I forget the name.
Quentin Tarantino.
Tarantino's
Gravedigger.
Yeah.
Or
That's
Gravedigging or Gravedigger.
Something
I
like
own
that.
It's on Blu-ray. They released it just as that two-parter.
As a kid, like in middle school / high school, like obsessed with CSI. Even back then, when I had no kind of like interest in kind of like the film world or anything like that, I remember seeing those episodes and being like, oh.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
Yeah.
Like, I remember he came onto it, and it was a pretty big deal because he was a huge fan of CSI at the time, and it was right in the middle of CSI being that major cultural landmark at the time.
Like staple of. Now you got NCIS, like New Orleans, that are
right.
like
they're the new ones. But do you remember when they did? I don't know how long you watched CSI, but they had done like crossovers.
Oh my God.
Where it would do all three series.
Gary Sinise is going to talk to William Peterson? My lordy, all right.
Right. Those were some of the best. Those were some of my favorites. And massive
that was the Avengers before the Avengers.
Right. And massive crossovers like that are real hit and miss depending on what you're doing. And it's a lot of fun when they do it right, which kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about a little bit at the beginning of the episode.
The Jimmy Timmy Power Hour.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Obviously
yes,
about that.
Seminal crossover event.
But speaking of the CW series, as we were talking about, was they actually did the big crossover this year, which was the Elseworlds crossover over at CW. And Elseworlds, for those who don't know, it was a 3-part crossover this year between Arrow, Supergirl, and Flash. Again, I don't really watch the shows religiously like I used to, but whenever they do the crossovers, I always tune in because it seems to be the most fun that the shows are having at the time.
Yeah.
Hey, there's that word again, fun.
Oh, again,
fun with DC characters is a bad thing. What have we done?
Triggering me.
I know, I'm sorry.
Buddy the cat right next to me is literally shaking now.
I know. But look, so I did tune in, I watched it, and it was kind of fun. What they did was essentially the Monitor shows up and gives a crazy guy played by one of the guys from Lost.
Monitor being like the villain.
He's kind of like the Watcher.
Gotcha.
From the Marvel universe.
Yeah. So, like, my perspective from all of this is that I don't watch any of the CW superhero
Well, he's never been on the show until this.
Yeah. But it's like, from my perspective, like, I remember when Arrow was first coming out on CW and seeing all these commercials about, like, you know, it being like, this guy takes out people with arrows. Crazy. And now you're seeing like time travelers and John Constantine jumping in and like Supergirl and
Constantine's the best thing about Legends of Tomorrow because Constantine's just the best.
And it's as somebody who really doesn't watch any of this stuff and really not that I don't have an interest, but really just like
you don't have the time. These shows are so
the investment,
they're so time consuming.
But even from a tertiary like standpoint, I look at like seeing all this crossover news and like talking about like what's going to come up. I'm impressed on the base level of like how this is just like systemically like seeing, you know, obviously what Marvel and like what other studios are trying to do, just like on this other scale of what these shows have accomplished. Of literally Supergirl was what, Fox before?
No, it was produced by WB, but it was on CBS.
That's right. And then it eventually came over to CW, and it's like
because CBS it wasn't pulling the ratings to survive, but if you moved it to CW,
those ratings
are
pretty good. Yeah. And it's just looking at what they're doing now, I can't imagine that a kid who grew up with comic books and like really found like, oh, like a Green Arrow show, that'll be cool, it's never going to happen, is now crossing over with Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Constantine, The Flash, and
introducing Batgirl. Like
Batgirl,
it's taken
Ruby Rose.
It's taken until now, by the way, for this series to really define the fact that Gotham exists. Like they name dropped Batman last season,
which is like, just go back like even 5 years ago. If you're talking DC, you are talking Batman.
Right.
That is your selling point. And like even like they announced Gotham, and I'm like, that's dumb, but it makes sense. And even now you hear like, no, the show's pretty good, and like not because it's Batman, like not having seen it, but the fact that these shows can now stand by themselves and wait until like season 7 to be like, oh yeah, no, Batman's around, or like Batgirl. It really is just kind of emblematic of like where culture is nowadays, like pop culture at least. And
sure.
So for you, like if I ask you, what is your perspective as someone who like has been in and out of the shows and like sees this and kind of what's about to come ahead? How do you feel?
God damn, that is a good question. Well, okay, so here is my thing. I've definitely fallen on and off the ship multiple times just because it's a lot of content. But I do always tune in for the crossovers.
A lot.
Too much sometimes. But what I will say is I think that the crossovers offer both sometimes the absolute best of what these shows are.
Yeah.
It can also be the worst because sometimes because they are crossovers, they get a little too convoluted for their own and characters get lost in the mix. And that definitely happened in this where they lost like most of the characters in the mix because, I mean, it's really supposed to be that Barry and Oliver have been switched, and so people think that Oliver is Barry and Barry is Oliver.
Did they also switch their powers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like everyone thinks that Oliver Queen is actually Barry Allen, and Barry Allen, played by Stephen Amell, still has the powers.
Yeah.
Just like Oliver Queen is now played by Grant Gustin,
Yeah.
and so it's fun. And so they go to Earth 38, which is where Supergirl is, and they're like
the classic pit stop for any.
Well, because they figure if their reality has changed, but they go there and she recognizes them, then it's only their Earth that's having the problem.
Yeah.
And I mean,
which is kind of neat of idea.
Right.
Of, like, we got multiple universes. Like, are we the outlier? Let's go check a couple to.
So my favorite thing about this though is they go to Earth 38, and the first thing that happens is you start seeing the opening montage from Smallville, and they start playing the themes from Smallville,
What?
which is great. And
now, even I know Smallville,
right?
So,
and so
that
it was
would
like
make me go,
somebody save me,
and we just lost
everyone.
Everybody.
So it shows, and it's Supergirl hanging out with Clark because they brought Tyler Hoechlin back to play Superman again.
Yeah.
And they even had Lois this time, which was great. And
Yeah.
they're wonderful together. It's a throwback to the Lois and Clark from the Reeves movies
Yeah.
and a little bit of the Lois and Clark TV
The
show.
Dean Cain,
It's a great relationship. But so that, that's really how the show plays out. Then they come back to Earth 1, and yes, everything's wrong on Earth 1, but nowhere else. And it turns out that the Monitor has been seeing people. He's essentially going Earth to Earth to find a champion.
Yeah.
Because he says something big is coming and he needs champions to defeat the big thing. So they go to Gotham at one point, and that's when they run into Batgirl. And this is the problem with the second episode a little bit, at least for me, is that it all feels...
So this is an event of 4 episodes.
3 this time, though.
3 episodes.
Because the Legends aren't in this one. The Legends did their own crossover amongst themselves.
Of course they did.
They did a Back to the
If
Future.
you're not doing a crossover, what are you doing?
Right. So they crossed over with themselves into an old episode.
They crossed over
into an
with
old episode.
themselves.
Yes.
All right.
So-
We are starting to get Christopher Nolan levels of we got to go another level. This is too much.
Legends does what Legends wants to do, and Legends is the only one of the shows that I consistently watch still because of Constantine.
Yeah.
As everyone knows, Constantine is my favorite DC character.
Yeah.
Outside of Arrow, but more Arrow the comic, not so much as the show.
Yeah.
But regardless, the only problem with the second episode is it becomes a backdoor pilot for the Batgirl show that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Which is fine because Ruby Rose is good in the episode. I like her Batgirl a lot. Gotham, I guess Bruce has been missing and he left and is no longer Batman, so she's taken over.
Is his back broken? Did he, have a little bit too much of that fear toxin?
I'm wondering. They
Poison
don't really
Ivy give him a little too much of an itch.
They didn't really address it. He's just missing, or he's been gone. He left.
God. Is he lost in the Bat Cave?
I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out it was like the Bane thing.
Turn on the lights.
Oh God,
I can't find the switch.
So anyway,
Oh God.
It's great because she's good as Batgirl.
Yeah.
The suit looks cool. The problem is that because it
Ruby Rose.
feels like a backdoor pilot, it kind of stalls the rest of the story out. And nothing really happens.
Which is so funny because, you look at the lesser elements of, going to Marvel movies of, look at Age of Ultron. Thor's subplot is literally to set up, Infinity Stones is to set up just kind of Ragnarok.
Right.
And it feels not incoherent, but more incongruent with the kind of, main story that's being told. And I don't know, if anyone's figured it out just yet, but it seems like if any of these crossovers happen, that's just kind of a side effect of that's the business side of we're going to bring things together, but if we're bringing in new elements to get Spider-Man into Civil War, we need to do a little bit of legwork to be all right, this is who this is, and they don't necessarily pertain to the story of the crossover going on.
Yeah, totally.
It's a little clunky.
Well, and so they tried their best to avoid that. But again, like any crossover, you do run into that. And especially now because when you're using it as a backdoor pilot on top of that, because you really you don't just get Ruby Rose to be Batgirl for one episode.
No, you do not.
And so then they go back and reality's been rewritten again.
Oh, no.
And now Oliver, he's not Arrow. Him and Barry are apparently thieves, and Barry no longer has his powers.
Oh, jeez.
And a black-suited Superman shows up.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But at the end of it, it turns out that all of this is a big setup because next season they're going to be doing Crisis of Infinite Earths, which is what it announces at the very end. It says Fall 2019, Crisis of Infinite Earths. And this is a huge deal because...
As someone who's heard Crisis of Infinite Earth, I don't read comics, I really don't follow too much
I know.
of it.
This is all new for you for the most part. I know that you know what it is, but Crisis of Infinite Earths, I own it. I own the original run of Crisis of Infinite Earths. Crisis of Infinite Earths is arguably
a little of a tough phrase.
It is.
Crisis of Infinite Earth.
It's
Speaking
arguably
classes.
in the top 5 DC stories ever told.
Oh, dang. Right
And
next to Howard the... Wait, that's Marvel. Dang it.
You're doing it again. Trying to
Being
be
an
smarter
idiot.
than me.
Ouch. All right.
It's not working out.
Sir.
I'm sorry. No, but regardless.
Yes.
Crisis of Infinite Earths, like I said, probably arguably in the top 5 stories, I believe, in the DC universe. And it was a storyline that Flash has really kind of been setting up since like season 1-ish.
What season is it on at this
Season 5.
point? Oh, my God. And
No, 6. Season 6.
And Arrow's at what,
7? Yeah. And Supergirl is at 4.
And Riverdale's at 3. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. I keep waiting for Archie to show up in one of these, to be completely honest with you.
I'm okay with that.
Because it's a CW series. Wow. Okay.
Hey.
So anyway, it's very interesting that they're actually going to land this, and they're actually going to do it. It'll be interesting.
By land, do you mean just like attempt it? Or do you mean like they're going to pull it off?
A little of both. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm going to assume they're going to pull it off because I'd argue that the best episodes of these shows, the last 2 seasons, has been the crossovers. But the fact that they're actually doing something so substantially large as Crisis of Infinite Earths, it seems like it could be a good way to also usher Arrow out of the CW and let Batgirl kind of take over as the brooding hero.
Given the 7 seasons, it's ready to like maybe take
season 8. I feel like could potentially be the last because you could, I guess, have Oliver ultimately sacrifice himself to save the Infinite Earths because it sets up at the very end, like he tells the Monitor that he makes this deal with the Monitor essentially to save
also
Kara.
spoilers
and
for this crossover event. Just saying.
Well, but they never say what it is.
Yeah,
he just makes a deal with the Monitor. That's all we know.
That's like it sounds silly, but that's a great villain name. I think
it really
the
kind
Monitor.
of is. But
sounds like either a janitor that's like coming by to like make sure that all the kids are in line, or it just sounds like a big like screen with a face on it, like is it Zora?
Yeah,
from Captain America, Zola.
I thought you were talking about Zelda there for a second. The Zoras, you know, that live underwater.
Yeah, but they don't have monitor faces. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
And what's interesting, as somebody who is on the outskirts, but still kind of like in tune with popular culture and whatnot, as much as I think I am, I do find it pretty impressive that with kind of all that goes on with the DC, the CW kind of like universes, they're kind of really good at like, at least in a marketing term, saying like, here's our main run of like Supergirl episodes, here's our main run of Arrow episodes, here's our main run of like Flash episodes, and then being very clear of like, here's the crossover, here's the event, like not like getting it too muddled of being like, wait, what's going on?
No,
like and like hearing that they're about to attempt like this big Crisis of Infinite Earth sort of thing, and like as much as it could be like a little convoluted, like trying to introduce like Ruby Rose and like the Gotham into it, it seems like they have a plan of like, hey, we're building towards something, we're putting our kind of chess pieces on the board right now. And so as somebody who really doesn't have an interest, I'm impressed, and like probably the closest I'll get to being interested in like checking out at least this crossover event, just to see like, does it seem like this whole hubbub of like all this work is worth it?
We should sit down and watch
every episode of every season.
Yes,
agreed.
No, we should watch all the crossovers together over the next, like leading into Crisis next year.
I'd be down.
And looking at it and seeing how much you enjoy it versus, like, I actually have some of the knowledge of, because I watched almost all of them until last season religiously until I just didn't have
you
time
as the
anymore.
Encyclopedia next to me of like, wait, who's that? And you're like, well, in
right.
issue 42 of Green Arrow, that was the Duckman.
But it's pretty impressive when you think about it, because the DC movies have had a very hard time trying to do something like this. Like, Justice League should have been very similar to this story, and having Darkseid show up and things like that. The fact that
the movies would have gotten to this point by Phase 3, the way that, like, if they followed the Marvel formula, but they just screwed up Phase 1.
And I don't want to say screwed up, because there's a lot of people who like Man of Steel, there's a lot of people who like Wonder Woman, and there's a lot of people who are going to either really like or really dislike Aquaman, which we'll talk about later.
Get to. Like, not saying there isn't positive. Like, I love Wonder Woman. Like, I really do. And I appreciate aspects of Man of Steel, but I am, like, it is kind of funny to see, like, especially, like, the kind of inverse. Not saying that Marvel TV is screwed up because, Daredevil season 1 I really liked.
Defenders is not good.
I haven't seen Defenders, I haven't seen Iron Fist, and I haven't seen Luke Cage, but I have seen Jessica Jones and I have seen Daredevil, and I need to see Punisher.
Punisher's great.
And it's like, it is just kind of funny about like how they're kind of taking the inverse a little bit on that of like, let's make good isolated stuff for our TV, whereas DC is super competent, like what I've just talked about, of like having this like kind of interweaving mythology between all these different things, and like how they are able to like have such a like, and it's not obviously Warner Brothers having like too much of a direct influence, but like you can see the benefit of having people that care to make this work.
Well, not just that. There's a stark difference between what's going on with DC TV and DC movies. And that's Greg Berlanti. Because Greg Berlanti's the guy who's in charge of all the TV shows as far as the DC TV goes. And it's very clear that he and his writing staff are all on the same page and have been working up to very much these events, and that's why every season each event has felt more and more in line with what they're building to, which has made them fun, which has made them good. And I think that's why it's continued to work, and that's what keeps bringing me back, is that I actually really like these casts. Like, the cast is really fun, and the stories they're telling are good, and the banter back and forth between them, because they've all been doing this together so long now.
They're just like ingrained in these roles, and they just know how to do it. And it's that what we were kind of talking a little bit about last time with Marvel, is that DC TV at least has the patience to be like, we'll get there. Like, we're going to have to do a little legwork, and it's going to be a little clunky along the way, and it might not even be, the most ergonomic way to set up all this stuff. But when we get there, it'll be worth it.
Right, and I think it's really cool that out the gate we're like, hey, by the way, next year, the big crossover is Crisis of Infinite Earths. Like, every year we kind of wait to see what the crossover is. They're saying they're doing it, but we never know what it is.
Yeah.
But this time, a year out, they're going, hold our beer for us.
Mark your calendar. This is going to be a little fun.
I'm very curious, because Legends doesn't have the ratings that the other shows do.
Yeah.
And I keep wondering if Legends is going to survive another season. I kind of think it will, because it's kind of that's little engine that could.
That's the thing. That's the one out of all the shows I've been the most interested to check out, just because it seems the most like...
You would like Legends the most because it's the most Back to the Future-esque.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically Back to the Future, the series with superheroes.
Do you got like a guy in a DeLorean just driving around trying to
stop
his mom from,
falling in love with him?
Yeah,
no, they don't. But they definitely make lots of Back to the Future jokes.
Oh, I like that. I like Back to the Future. Okay, all right, you got me.
But my curiosity especially lies in the fact that they weren't involved at all this season.
Yeah.
They did the crossover within themselves.
Yeah.
So if Legends is ushered off at the end of the season, and are they involved next season? Like, what comes of that? And especially now that there's been talk that there could potentially be a new Superman show with him and Lois, and they're trying to do the Batgirl. Like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. It's so, and like, to not immediately always go back to Marvel, like, having seen Into the Spider-Verse recently, and especially with this Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, we're just getting to a point where pop culture is like aware enough of like how kind of like all this content works, and like how like properties work for the most part. Like, you're not gonna just pull every random guy off the sidewalk and be like, hey, explain the Elseworlds and like Crisis of Infinite Earth. They'd be like, you're just uttering gibberish to me. But we're getting to a point where you can do something like Into the Spider-Verse, and it's in the middle of Sony having its renaissance with Spider-Man, in the middle of Marvel still also working with Spider-Man in like the height of its power. You can do Into the Spider-Verse and have it be like its own thing, and people will get it.
By the end of December, people are actually going to know who Spider-Man Noir is, and that blows my mind. Like, not
and
just
know
me.
How he is the greatest thing that has ever existed.
So I guess
right
I'm just going to jump into it then, because we're moving into it. We both saw Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
And for those who don't know, Into the Spider-Verse is going to be this really great animated film.
Yes.
Or it is, not it will be. It is, that actually takes the Miles...
I don't know. Let's build up the suspense a little bit.
It's telling the Miles Morales version of the Spider-Man story, but through the lens of what would happen essentially if you were doing a Crisis of Infinite Earths.
Yes.
I mean, really, that's the best way to describe it, is that you're kind of doing Crisis of Infinite Earths, but with the Spider-Man characters.
Well, and it's funny because I remember when the movie was first announced, and they announced it's going to be like a Miles Morales story. Like, there was a lot of blowback and kind of a little trepidation even on my part of being like, oh, like, you're going to use an animated movie to, like, introduce this kind of, like, nice, like, diverse character into a really well-established franchise, like, that could be used to highlight this diverse character that a lot of people have a deep-seated passion for that nobody thought they'd get to see it, like, on the big screen.
Right.
Seeing it now and, like, kind of, like, it's hard to put into words how well it captures. And, like, let me backtrack a little bit. The audience I saw it with, a friend of mine, I don't want to name drop him in case he doesn't want to be name dropped, took me to an early screening of the film. In
a secret location.
In a secret location, bag over my head. Didn't really get to watch the movie. It was kind of a weird situation.
So it was basically kind of like you were listening to an audio play.
Yeah, even then.
Great.
But watching the film, there were a ton of kids in the audience that were, like, you know, from the age of, like, 5 to 14. You have the wide gamut, who just, like, there was a buzz in the air of, like, the adults, were loving the film, but, like, these kids, it was like this was their new Back to the Future. It was their new kind of just such specialized introduction to this crazy world that it was something that I've grown to love. I love the Sam Raimi movies, and, like, that was my introduction to Spider-Man. If I had this movie as a kid, Miles Morales would be an icon for me to look up to. Like, the way that this movie is able to take this character that a lot of people were afraid that this was just going to be the throwaway movie just to, like, get him out there to satiate, like, people who like him. By far, this is my favorite Spider-Man movie, and 2, I think it does such justice to his character, such justice to Spider-Man, and such justice to, like, this world that I think it's going to throw, if people weren't already, like, if Sony wasn't already like, hey, maybe, like, Miles Morales should have a part in, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like, it's a definite, like, let's get, like, this character, let's get this environment, this vibe, this kind of sense of, like, and, like, the theme of the movie of anybody can be Spider-Man, this inspiration. I'm just buzzing from it. I just love that this movie is such a great encapsulation of, 1, what Spider-Man is, and 2, what it could be, and that it literally speaks to everybody. And having Miles Morales as the main character, who's this earnest kid from this different environment that you don't usually get in superhero movies, as the main star of this great I'm excited. I'm, like, all over the place.
So it's really, really great because I saw it as well. I was lucky enough to go to the Collider screening with the Q&A afterward.
I've heard of that.
I don't know. It's this thing online, I guess. I don't know. There's people there.
Schmoes,
whatever it is. So we got to go. It was myself and Alex Marzonia.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He's a great friend of ours.
He's a friend, yeah.
Might be my roommate. I'm not really sure.
Great is a certain adjective you can use.
Yeah, so we went ahead and we went to see it, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew that Phil Lord and Chris Miller were involved, obviously.
Yeah.
Phil Lord had written the script, and I was trepidatious a little bit, but I love them. So I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
They directed Hans.
Yeah, don't let's not do the salt in the wound, please.
Sorry, yeah.
So it very much reminded me of Lego Batman and the feel of Lego Batman, where it's this big love letter to all things Batman in that movie and what Batman is and what it makes him tick and the character in the world.
Yeah.
That's what Into the Spider-Verse is for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But almost more so.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I'm saying that because Lego Batman was so good, but they're so similar in that fact that they're these just glowing love letters to what Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
Not just Peter, but Miles to Spider-Man Noir to like even Spider-Ham. He gets so much to do. The Spider-Gwen stuff is mind-blowingly great.
Yeah.
And Miles' story is done in such a way that's so interesting. And I was a little worried that they were doing so much within Miles' origin story, if you will, that I was afraid he was going to get lost in the shuffle, and we were going to be like, hey, look, it's Peter Parker, and it's really fun.
We're not going to put a movie on his shoulders because we got all these other guys.
Right.
It's like, no, this movie, the main character is Miles Morales.
Well, not just that. None of the other Spider-Man really want anything to do with him. That's the other thing.
To a degree.
Right.
Without spoiling
anything. They really don't believe in him, is the best way to put it, and they don't really see him as one of them.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting dichotomy that we have never seen in something like this.
Well, and it's that aspect that, like, again, without spoiling anything, really gets into the idea of, like, what is Spider-Man? Like,
right.
As kind of, like, why do kids want to, like, wear a Spider-Man mask? Why do people, like, aspire, like, look up to him as, like, a hero?
Dude, there's obviously a Stan Lee cameo. It's a Marvel movie.
My audience just kind of had a moment of...
We did too.
Yeah.
It was a really beautiful moment, and the only reason I bring that up is because you talk about the idea of why would a kid want to wear a mask? It plays into that.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's so beautiful, and it's so heartbreaking at the same time, but it's almost a really great final cameo, if you will, even though we know he has more.
But it definitely, like, is so, especially with a character like Spider-Man, is so emblematic of who Stan Lee was and who he made Spider-Man for. And, like, just... It's such a great scene because, like, it is a moment of, like, where Miles is as a character. Not going to say much more, but to go further with that point is that, especially with I keep wanting to say Phil Miller and Chris Lord, but Chris Miller, Phil Lord, especially looking at Lego Movie or something like that. That is something that is very surface level appealing with a very onion-like kind of layers. With that was me.
Ogres don't have layers, but I don't know what you're talking about.
That was my attempt at Shrek, and well, not gonna have a career in voicing Shrek anytime soon. But Lego Movie very much revealed itself by the end to, like, show some depth into, like, what it was building up the entire time. And Into the Spider-Verse, I think, does the same thing, but, like, with something that's not more universal, but it's so much more, like, hitting to the core of, like, what is the purpose of this content? What is the purpose of looking up to having superheroes? What is the purpose of you know, like, having a symbol such as, like, somebody who has superpowers or something that fun to, like, inspire, like, children? I'm making this sound a lot more cerebral than it is, but
it kind of is.
But it has these deep messages on top of some of the funniest jokes I've heard in the longest time that made me laugh out loud. Some of the best action that you'll ever see in an animated movie. And speaking of the animation, some of the most creative, like, storytelling in terms of how to visually represent one character, just kind of ideas and transitions and how passage of time. This is a movie that fully embraces what a comic book is, that I don't think this story could have been told as effectively as a comic book because of what is added through the filmmaking.
Definitely.
I'm talking a lot. Sorry.
No. That's good. I'm glad. I'm really, really glad because I wanted to make sure that you could get out what you were thinking. By the way, speaking of the animation, did you see that one negative review on Rotten Tomatoes?
And I get it. I do.
I thought it was very interesting. For those who are not aware of the situation, there's a reviewer by the name of Roger Moore. He writes for a website in Florida, I believe, and he's on Rotten Tomatoes.
Been to Florida? Nice place.
Crazy people, but regardless.
Old people. Old people and crocodiles.
They definitely had...
Topgolf. Love Topgolf.
He definitely wrote this review that was all about the animation, essentially. And he really hated the animation, and I kind of get it. It's definitely jarring for people if you aren't used to it, but the whole idea is essentially that they're trying to emulate the older look of the comics down to even down to the dots that those old printers used to put out on the comic pages. It's different. It's not necessarily for everyone, and I get where it came from, but I definitely also thought that review was satire.
I'm 23 years old at the time of this recording, even though I expect to live until 27 when I go out in a blaze of glory in a disastrous
Young Guns 2 style? Great.
I haven't seen Young Guns 2.
Man, this podcast was great for the first 43 minutes until you said that.
I was violently kicked out. But I'm not an old man by any standards, maybe psychologically in the sense that I just love watching MASH on rerun. But there are some movies that I watch, especially action movies, that I get to and I'm like, it's a bit too fast for my eyes. It's a bit too much for like my... And it's,
look, man, we all know you're talking about Michael Bay. Just say it.
You would think. I think Michael Bay is one of the best action directors. Even though
those Transformers movies would beg to differ at times. There are some of those...
I'm not saying they're good films, but I think there's the discussion to be had about... Man, Michael Bay's an auteur.
No, I don't disagree with you because I've talked about it before. I will go to bat for just about every one of his movies outside of everything that he did in the Transformers franchise, other than the first one. Other than some of the sequences in the third.
I will even defend some stuff. The second one is not a good movie. That forest action fight is great, and I will even defend a couple of the other. There's an action fight within a military base that I genuinely think is great. I know, not good movies. But to get back to the point, is that, what was this reviewer's name?
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore.
Not like James Bond, obviously. Just another gentleman named Roger Moore.
Just to make sure he doesn't kill us. Because, you know.
And here's the thing. I don't want to shit on his opinion
at
all. And I hope that people, like I said, I completely understand. I disagree with it.
Yeah.
But it's his prerogative. I don't have his set of eyes. I don't know what he sees in things. I don't his vision could be much different than mine.
Yeah. My disappointment is that it just, to give it such low of a score means that he doesn't see such intrinsic value in like what this could mean for society. And that's not to say he should see it the way that I do, but even for like action movies that I see that are a bit like kind of over the top and even a bit too fast for me, that I get a little disoriented, I'm still able to like have the critical eye of like, even if, you know, my biases aside, what does the movie say by itself? What is the movie like, kind of, you know, the storytelling and all that nice.
Well,
like,
then you are
jazz.
More of an adult than Bill Mayer is after his whole tirade against Stanley.
That is something I will definitively say. Dumb, stupid, shouldn't have said that, and completely disagree. And don't.
I think it was worse that he doubled down on it.
But that's what people expected.
I know, but it still doesn't make it better.
No, it doesn't. But to talk about Roger Moore, it's
Roger Moore.
I don't agree with the review. I don't. But I do understand to a level of how that could ruin a movie for somebody. I think if the movie wasn't as great as it is, and if the movie wasn't just kind of had the importance that I think it really could have in terms of like the genre it's in and what it could do for children, and like, you know, all the like, again, if I was a kid seeing this movie, what I think it could do for me, I don't think people would be as disappointed in his review. Like, if this was, you know, a review for, name any generic animation like Ice Age 4. Like, he didn't like the animation style. Like, I get it. Like, people wouldn't be having this conversation because it wouldn't be in contrast to all these great reviews. But it just disappoints me in the sense of I think this is really an important movie, and the fact that he's letting the animation dictate kind of that just gives it, and like I think there's something special about being a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that's at 100%. Whatever being on Rotten Tomatoes means, I saw an ad recently that was like, it's 100% fresh, and I'm like, that's not true.
Legitimately, that ad came out and then it happened like right after.
And it's one of those things of there's something special about that. And you know, I'm not saying change your opinion, change your review for the sake of like fitting with, you know, the society and what they say, but taking an extra second to look at why this is important and why everybody thinks this is so special to celebrate and is being contrary at the moment as important as like kind of trying to see that intrinsic value. I don't know. I think there's a deeper discussion to be had there instead of just being like, oh, this guy didn't like the animation, poo-poo on him. I don't know. It's a tough conversation to have because movies are subjective. Movies are, and art is subjective. And maybe the animation really did like affect him in a way that took him out of the film where he just could not get that intrinsic value that so many people had. I don't know. I'm rambling here, but I get it, but I'm also disappointed.
Hey, and like I said, it happens. I really can't blame him. I really can't. Again, it's all just personal opinion at the end of the day. But I do hope that you guys go check out Into the Spider-Verse because I really do think it, at least for me, I'm not willing yet to say it's the best Spider-Man movie. I very much still adore Spider-Man Homecoming. For me, that's my favorite live-action one just because it's the closest. You have to understand. I like the Sam Raimi movies a lot, but Homecoming was the character that I waited so long to see.
Yeah.
And there's something about, even down to the fact that his eyes move and that actually emotes, which is something that the Raimi films, at least for me, are not aging as well of because of that.
Yeah.
his eyes moving even a little bit is a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
Because it actually gives me the Spider-Man that I knew in the comics, where you'd see his eyes, like the patches of his eyes on the comics panels, even moving
Gives
just
it
a
that
little
expression, gives it that humanity.
Right, and that's what it is more than anything. Plus, Tom Holland is so
great.
good.
He's
so good.
On the record, I will say that Spider-Man Homecoming is my third least favorite Marvel movie.
I know. You and I have very different opinions.
I'm much more of a fan of like the epic, the sense of like Spider-Man is like the intrinsic like loner in this world who has to like cripple like the weight of being a hero versus the person. Whereas Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm in the middle of playing Spider-Man PS4, and like to have that Spider-Man that's just like, no, what does it mean to be the Spider-Man like on the ground and like to be like the symbol for New York, just like the day-to-day guy? I think Spider-Man Homecoming captures that wonderfully. It's just like kind of just different intrinsic value I put on storytelling, where I get why people love it, just wasn't for me.
Whereas that was the story I was looking for, was like that ground level friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah. That's what I wanted.
Really liked it. Excited for Far From Home.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of everyone in Comic-Con Brazil who saw the trailer over the weekend, by the way.
I see, this is a whole other discussion where I feel like Marvel missed, and I get it, Sony's different. I'm just so curious as to like, how do you market that movie?
We're gonna find out soon enough.
Very soon.
I feel like it can't be that far away if they showed a Brazilian Comic-Con trailer. Yeah. I thought maybe we'd get one in time for Into the Spider-Verse, but it's not looking like that's gonna happen. But I'm also not in a rush to get it.
No.
The movie comes out in July. We have plenty of time to start marketing it. I really think Sony's got an uphill battle with that, though, because how do you do a trailer for that movie while Endgame exists? And
hey, if Venom taught them anything, is Sony can do what Sony can do, and no one can tell them otherwise.
That is so true. All right, guys. Well, we are going to go to break. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about Aquaman, maybe a little bit of Mary Poppins, and actually,
Umbrella Lady?
Once Upon a Deadpool. I have to talk about it a little bit.
Yes, I want to hear you.
Yeah, I've definitely got a lot of thoughts about it that I'd like to get out. So,
big Fred Savage fan.
You know, hang out, enjoy some words from some of our favorite friends in this space, and we will see you guys on the other side.
Yuletide carols, Christmas time. Let's go.
What's up, movie nerds? My name is Brandon Hanna, and I host a show called Film Physics. What is that, you ask? Well, it's the show where we hold filmmakers accountable for their blatant disregard for scientific accuracy. We ask the important questions of this generation, such as, could Jack have survived the Titanic? Or, is Star Wars hyperspace travel even possible? If this interests you, head on over to youtube.com/Brandon Hanna, and thank you for taking time out of your day for this moment of science.
Welcome back to the PJ Campbell Show. Once again, I am your host, Patrick Campbell. Patrick, Hogue, are you here still?
Yeah, no, he caught me off guard with such energy.
Actually, it looked like I caught you playing Super Smash Brothers again. Could you not be doing that while we're podcasting?
Listen, there are two things I need to do in my life right now. Eat and drink, which is one thing, and play Smash Brothers. Everything else can be going to the wayside.
You realize Smash Brothers only came out like a week ago,
Exactly.
And you're saying that it's literally the only thing you have to do in life?
My life is in shambles. I'm in so much debt. I have not gone to work in the past few days. I need money. Can somebody help me? And can they help me while I am playing Smash Brothers?
So you've been playing Smash Brothers. I bought it as well. I actually was very lucky that I had won a gift card at a work function last week for Christmas that I used it to buy it. And oh my God, dude, Super Smash Brothers Ultimate is great.
It lives up to its name in both positive and negative ways.
It's very nostalgic for me.
Interesting.
I remember being very young when the first one came out on N64, and I used to play it for hours on end with my friends.
Yeah.
And I played it on GameCube. Melee was all the time gaming in our house. And I hadn't played it a ton since. Like, I played it on Wii, it was fine, and I played it on DS, but DS, man, I didn't enjoy it. The screen was too small, so it made it not enjoyable to play.
Man, you are skipping over like major sections of like
I mean, I played
Smash Brothers history. No, man, it's so because I have a very interesting history with Smash Brothers where I didn't play the N64 version of Smash Brothers until like college.
And I'm the one who's missing history.
Well, it's so, but I'm a little bit younger than you, or maybe just like ill-informed. I had an N64.
Thanks for making me feel old.
No, dude, I'm just here to bring the reality to this podcast. You're pie in the sky with all these crazy, like, great ideas about society. I'm here to bring you the reality, and the reality we're going to talk about is Smash Brothers. But I had an N64. Like, I literally played Mario Party 1 and 2 and Super Mario 64, Donkey Kong 64, Tetris 64 more than I ate.
That's fair.
Slept, all these kind of things. Side note, I was so close to beating Donkey Kong 64 on the last level. And if people have played that game, they know that game takes a while to get to the end.
Oh, it's so hard.
And all of my siblings and I were up, like, watching me, like, super excited. And it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. My dad comes in and is like, turn it off, go to bed. And we're like, okay. So we, like, pause it. Go to bed, wake up the next morning, save file deleted.
Ow.
Don't know how, don't know why, didn't question it. But, like, so the original Smash Brothers I don't have too many formative memories of. Melee, I lived in Canada for about 6 years before I moved to the United States, and that was a game that didn't come out until I moved to the United States. Like 2001, and I moved here 2000. And I remember getting a GameCube and blazing through, like literally faking sick so I could play Luigi's Mansion because I was
and Rogue Squadron 2.
Rogue Squadron was a big staple of that, and not Top Gun. There was another like playing game, but Rogue Squadron was a big one. But Melee was a game we didn't get until a lot later, and literally has such like of that nostalgia, formative memories in my brain. But you skipped over the Wii one, Brawl.
I mean, I played it, but I wasn't. It came out at a time that I didn't have as much time on my hands.
Yeah.
So I never played it because I was afraid that I'd lose myself to it.
So let me paint a picture for you. When I was an antisocial little nard in middle school / high school. No,
so like right now.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
just like
great.
just taller, kind of, slightly, not really. Oh, God. But in middle school, that lead up to Brawl, that at the inception of what YouTube was, I remember that first trailer coming out where it starts with all the Melee like characters running out, and then they dissolve to like their new like kind of like.
I remember.
It's
yeah.
Meta Knight, Pit, Wario, and then freaking Solid Snake like it's revealed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want you in Smash Brothers. It's showtime. Like ends the trailer. So. And then you had the Smash Brothers dojo, where I would literally go to my school's library every day because they would release a new content of like the new game. And then the day we learned that Sonic was going to be in the game, shook our foundations of what society was.
Well, I followed all the announcements.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a big deal. I mean, that was the first time that we were really getting characters that were crossing platform.
It was third party
really,
finally
really cool.
got into
right.
there. And so for me, like I was totally into Melee, but I wasn't into like the hype around it. I just knew like this is a great game. Brawl was the first time I really experienced Smash Brothers hype. And so, cut to like the 3DS and the Wii U versions. I bought the 3DS one, like, and this is me in college who still didn't have any money. I took, valuable money out of food and living time to make sure I could play the 3DS version. And there was something that didn't click with me. Loved it, played a ton of it, but it wasn't that formative special version of Smash that Melee and Brawl were. And like my brother had a Wii U, so I like was able to play the Wii U version through that. This, Smash Brothers Ultimate is the first time in a while that like I've felt, playing, especially from the get-go, I got that kind of like butterflies in my stomach feeling of like, oh, this is special. This is Smash Brothers. This is what I've wanted. It's obviously it's not, when I was a kid, but dude, this game.
I've been having so much fun playing this because it's the first time in a while that I've really sat down to play a game. I mean, I played Injustice for a little bit because I'm a big fan. Obviously, we talked about the DC shows earlier.
Oh,
I love the DC characters.
That sounded like a really good aspect of a podcast that people should listen to.
I mean, if they want to go an hour back into this show, they can listen to it
They would have
again.
listened to it if they're at this point. Disregard what I just said.
Unless they went to the time codes on the bottom and jumped ahead.
Never mind then. Guys, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Listen to the first part.
But regardless.
You haven't been into playing too many games recently.
I played a little bit of Breath of the Wild because I'm a big Zelda fan.
Yeah.
Zelda's always been my franchise, that and Resident Evil. So I've been playing that, and are you surprised at this point? My parents were letting me walk down Hollywood video aisles at like the age of 8, and I was watching Halloween and Child's Play. I should not have been watching that stuff. So, of course, I lean horror.
So, quick digression. Did you play Resident Evil 7?
Not yet.
Oh, dude.
So
and Resident Evil 2 is coming out soon.
6, and
6 sucks. 7 gets back to the basics of what Resident Evil is.
I really want to, but my problem was that 6 bucked me so hard that I was having a hard time going back to it.
Totally understand. 7 is the apology letter of like, hey, literally, like, this is a house. Dude, this is creepy. This is atmospheric.
I even had the rail shooter game on Wii. Like, that's how much I love Resident Evil. I had the rail shooter game. So the fact that 6 threw me so hard is why...
Which it did to a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
So I never went back. And I will. I really will. I just need to find time to do it.
Yeah, you know.
But this is the first time in a while that I'm like, oh my God. Like, I feel like I just need
engrossed
to
in a game.
I feel the need. The need
for
speed.
Smash Brother. Oh,
it's like the same.
I thought we were doing...
Well, it's like the same thing.
Yeah.
Smash Brothers Speed, it's all the same.
Man, Tom Cruise announces the next playable character in Smash Brothers.
So, I have to ask you, you've been playing, what surprised you so far? Is there anybody that you've unlocked that you're very excited about? Because there's, 75 characters that you can unlock in this thing?
It's weird because it's like 74 base, but that doesn't include like the 3 Pokemon the Pokemon Trainer has. That doesn't include... kind of like
the spirits and things too.
Well, spirits are like not fighters,
but they give you power.
They give you power, but like that's kind of like an additive
Don't
thing.
Take that away. It's kind of fun.
It's kind of fun. I'm in the middle of spirit mode right now,
Me
which
too.
I've unlocked every fighter. There's nobody that was announced that I'm like it's really cool that Simon Belmont's in there because like people are like, oh yeah, no, I want him in. For me, they've announced 1 of 5 DLC characters, Joker from Persona, which is huge because Persona is exclusively a PlayStation/Sony franchise. So what that means is that, damn it, we're going to get Banjo-Kazooie.
That's what I'm super
Brothers.
hopeful for because I am dying to get Banjo-Kazooie since Rare has done nothing with him over at Microsoft.
Well, and that's the problem is that, but we're at a point now where kind of the second that Cloud was announced for like Wii U, people are like, wait, barriers have been broken. The one rule that has not been broken for Smash Brothers characters to be in Smash Brothers is that it's only been a Western character, like made in Western Earth, has not been put into a Smash Brothers game. That would include people like Banjo-Kazooie. That would include people like Rayman. Like it's only been like Japan exclusive.
Right.
And so, but Microsoft and Nintendo and Ubisoft have been really buddy-buddy lately, and Nintendo and Microsoft have been really buddy-buddy lately. And, like, basically, so Banjo-Kazooie and Paper Mario are the 2 characters I want in Smash Brothers.
Paper Mario was in Melee.
Not as a playable fighter. That was Dr. Mario.
Oh.
Yeah. He had a trophy.
For some reason I thought he was in it.
Not as a fighter. That's one that a lot of people have been wanting. But
you know who I'm hoping for is Joanna Dark. Do you remember Perfect Dark?
A lot of people have said her. I haven't played Perfect Dark, but a lot of people.
So Perfect Dark was made after GoldenEye. It was also made by Rare, and it was their way of trying to essentially do a sequel to GoldenEye when there wasn't another Bond movie for them to do it off of at the time.
I know people love
the original Perfect Dark is one of my favorite N64 games in the entire world.
Yeah.
And I really, really, really want an N64 Classic to be a thing for that game alone because it would be on it because it was a huge game at the time.
Yeah.
So I would love to see her in it. If they get Banjo-Kazooie, I could almost see her being one of the unlockables that they haven't announced too.
And like this was the problem with this Smash Brothers. Like the first trailer, aside from the announcement trailer, when they went to E3 this year, which is still crazy to think that was this year, when they announced that literally every character that was in Smash Brothers was coming back, it kind of set the tone of like, can anything happen?
Well, and not just
And,
every
like-
character, every level. I've
Not
seen,
every level. There's like
I don't know, man.
3 that haven't come back.
Well, okay, so
But
really
regardless,
close.
105 levels, like
And I mean, I have major nostalgia when I see a lot of them because there's
When-
some
when I
from
saw that-
all across the games.
when I saw that Fountain of Dreams and
Mhm.
Rainbow Cruise was back, I was like, okay, no, and like knowing that Snake was coming back, someone I didn't really use in Brawl, but knowing that he was there, it's like was very emblematic of what the Smash Brothers has felt like. Is that it just feels good to have. Like I'm in spirit mode, fighting all these different spirits, and like I come across a new level every time I play a spirit, and it feels like that nostalgia tinge comes on when I'm like, this is Pokemon Stadium 2. This is like the Mushroom Kingdom. This is Hyrule Castle, which has been in all of them, but it's been updated for graphics. This is a game that like capitalizes on that nostalgia and comfortability feeling that you have from like all the other Smash Brothers games, while still being like, all right, no, we are embracing kind of the modern like esports culture that is around Smash Brothers.
Did you see the video that got posted today by the people that are the stunt coordinators over at the MCU?
No.
They created live action Super Smash Brothers, and they're all in costume.
Dude,
it's so good.
I need to watch that because at some point, whether on this podcast, I need to pitch what my Nintendo Cinematic Universe is, which all leads to a Smash Brothers movie.
So you're pretty passionate about Nintendo.
That's the thing. It's when I saw Captain America: Civil War, there was a scene where Tony Stark went to go see Spider-Man. Other than Nintendo characters, Spider-Man was the one like kind of pop culture character that I was really invested in. And I started to feel that kind of like rumbly in my tummy, like sort of like excited like butterflies.
Sure.
Of, oh wait, this character that I've grown to love for so long is finally getting like either this treatment or like this thing that I am so excited for. And so I think about a movie where you have Link and Mario, and like it's a bit different because it's video games, it's not the same characterization through games, but in my head I see an image of a fighting field of like all the Nintendo characters fighting all the Nintendo villains, and the Pokemon trainer like releasing all of his Pokemons ready to send this armada to help all of them, as like the Avengers Circle moment in the Avengers, but for Nintendo. There's a part of me that's like, there is a way to build up to that has to be so perfect.
That is the most beautiful thing that I've ever heard. But to be honest with you, I didn't realize in Canada that you guys got past the NES.
Hey. Listen, video games in Canada are stupid expensive still. Like
That's what I'm saying.
And it's ridiculous. EB Games up there. Well,
you guys still have EB Games up in Canada?
Yeah.
Or do they still currently?
I visited last year and they still did. I was like in a mall and I was
Holy
like,
crap, I haven't seen an EB Games in I don't know how long, because we had them here, but GameStop is obviously the much larger of the...
Dude, the thing about Canada is come to us and you'll never die. You know? You always have a place to hang out, and EB Games is like, sweet. You'll probably find...
You guys also have Tim Hortons, so I mean...
Dude,
Tim
do you want
Hortons
me to go on
is-
a 1 hour tangent about Tim Hortons? Because I will. Because Ice Caps, Timbits, like, we can... Whew. But back
Look,
to...
if Kevin Smith was here, maybe we could talk about it, but he's not.
But back to Smash Brothers. I think there is something so special about... Because Smash Brothers is a series that I think is so emblematic of, like, it's too good to be true. Of, like... Especially just on announcements alone, like the fact that King K. Rool and Ridley were like two characters that fans were like, those were at the top of list of fan requests for every game, and the fact that this is a series that's like, no, we're gonna reward the fans, and the fact that we still have more to come even after the game is out. It's just a game that makes you feel, jazzed and makes you like appreciative and rewards you for being a fan of all this stuff. Of like, Spirit Mode is the perfect, is emblematic of, there's over 2,000 spirits, and it's the deepest cuts you will find of like Nintendo games or just like video games in general. But it's like, I'm not going to understand 90% of the references, but like 10% of like, oh wait, I love Katamari, and the fact that you're gonna have a Katamari like kind of like spirit in there, and also if Katamari was announced as a player, because Katamari Reroll came out on the same day as Smash Brothers, and it is great, and people should get that on the Switch. Regardless, Smash Brothers is a series that I think has such a nostalgic view to look at it, even
that's
in
where
a
I'm
contemporary
coming from
lens.
because, like I said, I mean, the first time I ever had an N64, the way I got it was I actually through the fact that I was taking care of a pug that had been left at the apartment.
That sounds
or at our house.
wonderful.
Yeah, and I watched him for like a month straight. So they paid me a lot of money to do it when I was younger.
Wow.
And I used the money to buy an N64 that was the Pokemon Stadium edition.
Dude.
Which was...
Dude.
Yeah, so I'm throwing it way, way back.
Did you play Pokemon Snap?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from in my love for all things Nintendo, because I'd always wanted to have a video game system, and my parents really didn't want me to have one. They had no problem that I was watching R-rated movies and stuff, but video games were apparently very off limits at the time.
Wait, is this plumber going to be beating up this like guy in a tunic? I'm not sure.
It's kind of weird. I'll give you that. But
video
you know
games
what?
are weird to look at.
They are.
I'm not
And
gonna
so
lie.
I worked for it, and they said, okay, well, if you want to buy it, you worked for it. We can't really stop you at that point, which was dangerous. And
You're on a roll. Oh,
yeah,
God.
But they
It's crazy.
afterwards, because one of my friends had Ocarina of Time, and I love Ocarina of Time. Obviously, as we talked about, Zelda's my my first favorite franchise.
Yeah.
And my parents ended up, for one of my birthdays, I can't remember what I was, but it was when they released Ocarina of Time as a gold edition, and the cartridge was even gold. My parents got me that for my birthday, and it was like the most amazing thing. I remember getting it, and my mom, like,
Such a
she just
special game.
I open it, and like I was legit teary-eyed and just so excited because I never thought I'd own that, and my mom was. It was the coolest. I still love it. I still have that, and it just
Nintendo,
makes me so happy.
Even in their packaging, even in their marketing, even in just like creating the things, is so good at that. Of like that moment that you've been building up to of getting the game, they make that special in and of itself. Of like, here's a gold cartridge to like show you how special this should be for you.
Did you ever play the Army Man games?
No.
Because they came in green cartridges, and that was really cool back then.
That just sounds cool. All I
Yeah.
know is Donkey Kong 64 came in a bright yellow cartridge. I never really played any Zelda games.
What game was it? It had a very bright red cartridge, and I don't remember what it was.
Pokemon
don't
Red,
think-
the Game Boy edition.
Well, I
came
know
in
that
red,
and blue, obviously,
and blue
too.
and yellow. Best version.
Well, we all have opinions.
I know there were some like translucent cartridges, like kind of like you could get like a purple translucent like system and stuff like that. I don't know. You're really testing my knowledge here, but
Well, I try my best on good days.
And on your bad days.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I was not ready for that as a comeback.
That about explains like what happens on your bad days. You're willing to test on the good ones and don't have a comeback on the bad.
Wow, that was that
was about a leap.
abrasive.
That was aggressive and a bit of a leap for the conversation we were talking about, which is our love for Nintendo.
Yeah. So anyway, I do have to say the thing that's really been cool about Smash Brothers for me is just kind of going back and just playing those again. And I've been having a good time. Sarah got a classic, the SNES Classic for her birthday earlier this year, and so she and I have been playing through some of the old SNES games.
Yeah.
I've been having fun with the nostalgia thing. Part of me is afraid, though, that we're going too far with the nostalgia thing at times with stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would die if we got an N64 Classic.
Dude, just... for NES and SNES Classics, I've looked at and be like, that's cool. That wasn't my generation. I was a generation past that, which was N64, but it's like, that's cool. The second they release that, which they will.
They have to at this point.
They're going to. It's a day one purchase. That is a thing that
even Sony's doing the Sony Classic of the PlayStation, and
Yeah.
I'm not even as thrilled about that because I feel like that's missing a lot.
From what I've
games.
heard is that a lot of people are like, oh, you're kind of just chasing a trend. Whereas Nintendo's really good at being like, we're going to sell you the same game over and over again.
And we'll continue to buy it.
But we love our games as much as you do. Whereas Sony's like, yeah, we got these good games. And it's like, but do you know why we love these games that you have? Like, it's just Nintendo, and Smash Brothers is so kind of emblematic of this, is just so, has such a reverence for its content and for, like, the legacy that it's built. And not only that, but, like, the joy it knows that its content can create. Like,
Sure.
they know, like, Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, they're great games in them of themselves, which is a phrase. But what they're really great at is distilling down the essence of what those games are. Mm-hmm. What a Mario game is, what a Zelda game is.
You're 100% right.
Yeah, and Nintendo's great at that in general.
It's really interesting that you said this stuff about Sony, about them like following a trend, because that was not very Sony-like for so long. A lot of the time they were ahead of the trends. So it's interesting that they've kind of fallen behind.
This all being said is that PlayStation 4 is still one of the greatest selling consoles of all time.
That's not even a question, and that Spider-Man game is next level.
Spider-Man God of War that came out there, which isn't my game of the year, but is damn close. And like Last of Us 2 is coming out soon. Death Stranding by Kojima, Ghost of Tsushima, Bloodborne. Sony, regardless of what you think of them, the exclusives they have for themselves. Tetris Effect, which I've been such involved in, Moss for VR. They don't have the legacy that Nintendo has, but man, you give them 20 years and they keep doing what they're doing. Damn. Yeah,
and it feels like Nintendo's on a massive comeback right now.
Oh, the Switch.
The Switch is switched everything for them.
But it's so funny that it feels nice that Nintendo's kind of perseverance has paid off, because the Switch is very much Wii U 2.0 of like...
But done correctly.
Yeah, and it's like we had this idea, we didn't give up on it. Like, Xbox with... when the Xbox One was announced was very much like, hey, it's this all-in-one entertainment system. And it's like, and everyone was like, no, we just want a thing that plays games. And they're like, okay, it just plays games. And, like, we're going to make different versions of that. And for their next console, they're getting a bit more back to that original vision. Whereas Nintendo was like, no, we believe in this. We believe. So it's like, we're not going to fall, the Wii U failed, but our next thing directly is going to be, like, this experience that we from the get-go believed in. And
we did
I just thought I'd come on this podcast and it wouldn't cause any problems to me psychologically, but I'm regretting all my decisions up until this point.
Hey, man, you haven't seen Young Guns 2. You're lucky to even still be here.
It's true. Literally, you started putting on steel-toed boots to kick me out, so...
I'll make you famous.
Yoo-hoo! I know that much.
The fact
I've
that
seen the first one.
Like, I like the first one, don't get me wrong.
Emilio
Young Guns 2 is one of the greatest sequels of all time.
It's Charlie Sheen's in both of those?
No, he's only in the first one. Emilio is in both of them.
Both of them. There's another actor that's in the second one that I'm like, oh, that guy's in it. So I'm interested. I'm going to watch it. But to get back to it all, Nintendo doesn't necessarily give you what they want. They give you what you know you're going to want.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true.
Yeah. God, I love Smash Brothers. And I'm going to keep playing it.
Is there anything that you're looking forward to that's not Smash Brothers right now on Switch that people should know about?
I'm very curious about Metroid, the Metroid Prime 4. Like, I've never really been a Metroid person, but one, the excitement around it, and two... Sorry, I had to defend
Hey, Alex,
myself.
come in here for a second.
Hey, Alex, if you're going to attack me, you better appear on the podcast.
And he closes the door.
He literally just hid in his room.
That's so
Sorry,
rude.
I was in the middle of a brilliant thought, and when somebody just came out of nowhere and started attacking me, what kind of home are you raising?
This
BJ?
podcast studio is out of control, is what we're saying.
Yes, 3 cats just around me. On Switch, Metroid Prime 4, like the Nintendo exclusives, obviously. Again, Katamari Rerolled, which is the most Japanese game I have ever played in my life, which is so great, is on Switch. Animal Crossing comes out next year, which I'm pumped for. A lot of small indies. If you haven't played Celeste, which is my game of the year this year, it's on Switch. It is one of the most emotional games I've ever played. It feels better than any Mario game I've ever played, and has an art style and soundtrack that is just perfection in and of itself. I'm excited for what the Nintendo Online service could be.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I didn't realize we were getting a new Animal Crossing. I clearly don't pay as much attention as I used to when it came to video games.
Stick with me, kid.
I clearly need to. Your Nintendo knowledge right now on what's going on with the Switch rivals everything going on with my mind when it comes to the Marvel movies.
Will it get me a job in a job interview?
Look, if you want a job in a job interview, watch Young Guns 2, then we'll talk.
All right. It's that easy?
It
Okay.
was that easy.
Kids, you
So,
heard it here first. Watch Young
Of course,
Guns 2,
I know that
get
you
any
guys
job.
were hoping to hear us talk about Once Upon a Deadpool, but the Smash Brothers thing had to be talked about.
It was
We've
a little,
been talking about
took
it
a bit
all
more
week.
precedence.
Well, I mean, look, legitimately, most of our text messages back and forth have either been about
Gushing about Smash Brothers.
Yeah, has been either the podcast and stuff going on with movies or Smash Brothers.
There was literally a section like the other day that was like, how many have you unlocked? And it's like, not even 10. It's like, there's like 50 more, and we're just like going back and forth of like.
So exhausting.
But it's worth it.
But it's so worth it.
So worth it.
So I do want to jump on to the Deadpool.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Because you saw Once Upon a Deadpool.
I did. I got to go
did
see
not.
Once Upon a Deadpool yesterday, and
What are your thoughts about it, PJ?
so it's very interesting. I'm very of two minds. It's such a fun experiment,
Yeah.
but I'm also at the point where I'm like, this is legitimately the third version of this movie that we've gotten in a year,
Deadpool
which
2.
feels like overkill.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, yeah, Once Upon a Deadpool is a PG-13 version of Deadpool,
Yeah.
which is fun, but it's also Deadpool 2 all over again, and a lot of the problems that Deadpool 2 has will still exist no matter how many times that they redo the movie.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's still really fun because I'm not a big fan of The Princess Bride. I know that I've just put a target on my back, like hardcore.
Target on your back, target on your head. All right.
But
Gonna have some people coming
I don't
after
know.
you.
Princess Bride just never really spoke to me. But I thought the idea of putting Fred Savage into the movie and doing the same framing device with him and Deadpool has kidnapped him and is forcing him to essentially be in this PG-13 version of Deadpool because of The Princess Bride. It plays really well.
It's such a good idea because it's not obvious. Like there are so
Right.
many like superhero tropes that are like you could do a version of this Deadpool that's like a young orphan that's like, let me tell you about the time I like knew Deadpool, and it's like, yeah, that's pulling from superhero tropes, but for Deadpool to like go to Princess Bride that has like a storytelling like framework, like that's such a Deadpool thing to take something that's so removed from superheroes to like
Exactly.
use it,
And that's what makes it
looks
so interesting.
interesting, yeah.
Which makes it a great experiment. But the biggest problem is, again, it doesn't stand on its own as a movie.
Yeah.
Because it really relies on the fact that you should have already seen Deadpool 2,
Yeah.
which then defeats the purpose of it being
Of
PG-13.
having a more inclusive like,
Right.
version of it, yeah.
And it also really just straddles the line of being PG-13. Like, yeah, the F-bombs are gone and the blood is gone, but
Yeah.
most of the swearing is still in the movie outside of that.
Well, and it's
there's
like-
a fun bit, though, where Deadpool actually has a beeper.
clicker, beeper?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so every time that Fred Savage tries to swear, he beeps the... And it leads
Well,
to
that's
this
great.
joke about Matt Damon that I cannot believe got left in the movie. That is so
An
hilarious.
editor forgot about it, or producer was like, yeah, whatever, just leave it in.
Well, I just mean because it's PG-13.
Oh, and it crosses that line.
In my
when
opinion,
shouldn't.
it very much crosses
Interesting.
that line, and it's so much fun though.
Yeah.
And Savage is game to be a part of this.
In the
That's
trailer,
the most interesting
he like
thing.
looks so engaging, let alone just like hilarious. But he looks like one, excited to be there, and two, just like an entertaining presence that can like stand up to an over-the-top character like Deadpool.
Right.
Just in the trailer alone.
And that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
And I was surprised I had so much fun. They also definitely use scenes from the director's cut,
Yeah.
which is interesting also because it's not just a PG-13 version of the theatrical cut. They're legitimately combining both versions
Yeah.
to create a new version again.
Yeah.
And there's some of those scenes that I really like that were added in. There's a whole thing during the suicide montage that is really kind of wonderful and funny, which is a weird thing to say.
I liked Deadpool 2, but that section was one of the best moments I had in a theater.
I like the ones they've added into it.
Really?
And
Okay.
that, at least for me, I mean, again, it's all subjective. And
Yeah.
was this necessary? No. Is it a fun experiment? Yes, because it's Deadpool, and I like also that they're putting some of the money towards fuck cancer. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I hope that people go in knowing what it is. My fear is that people are going to think it's a new movie.
It's kind of marketed that way, which is like when you see a stand-in that's very much it literally with no indication that it's Deadpool 2, a different version, but it is Once Upon a Deadpool. Like it very like from somebody who hasn't seen it yet and like who's kind of like involved in like movie news culture, it very much looks like it's presenting itself as, hey, this is going to be a radically different version of, it might be Deadpool 2, but it's going to be like totally justified and new. And it like the fact that you're kind of like, it's Deadpool 2, but just kind of neutered down a little bit, kind of like dampens my excitement a little bit.
I think you'll still enjoy it, especially because you're more of a fan of The Princess Bride than I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing. How many of these kids that they're trying to aim this movie at have actually seen The Princess Bride?
Yeah.
That also tells me this is still aimed at the same exact audience that they've already made this movie
Which
for.
is weird.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just very bizarre all around, but hey, it's legitimately a third Deadpool movie at this point that we have been gifted, essentially. Yeah. I can't believe that this character is getting so much play within 3 years or 4 years of the first movie.
It's kind of crazy to think about, like, the idea of a rated R Deadpool movie was insane, and the fact that, like, a PG-13 version of a Deadpool movie is seen as, like, a little crazy is, like, pop culture nowadays.
Pop culture's changed a lot, it feels like, but not really. But it's just kind of funny.
It's, like, evolved, quote-unquote. It's just, like, it's kind of, with everything, it's accelerated. And, Deadpool, I think, is such a big indication of, like, Deadpool came at a very specific time and, like, where, like, the saturation point for superhero movies and, like, Deadpool was the perfect character to, like, be injected into that kind of, like, framework for what studio films were at that time to be like, hey, let's make fun of this. And now we're kind of seeing, like, all right, we do enjoy that. Where does this go from here? And it's, like, the fact that pop culture is kind of getting, like, accelerating at a very fast pace, and it's, like, Deadpool, like, can it keep up with that? And that,
Well,
like,
it's trying its best. I mean, there's jokes in this version that pertain to the Disney merger.
Yeah.
Like, it legitimately, they definitely do that.
In the trailer.
The Nickelback joke is still one of my favorite jokes of the
hilarious.
entire year to me. So,
well, and it's like the
figure.
fact that this movie is an experiment, I think, is interesting. I'm excited for them to try an experiment with Deadpool with an actual new movie, because I don't think you can do.
That's my thing now.
Yeah.
Is that this all rides now on the idea of what comes next for the character. And obviously that kind of feels like that could even be as far as up in the air right now too, depending on when the Disney deal closes. Who knows what movies will actually be announced.
And now that Ryan Reynolds has this Detective Pikachu franchise on his shoulders, let's see where we go from here.
Well, and that movie's going to make so much money.
So much money. Because they're at a point now where Pokemon is as old as I am, which is dumb to think about. But that is my generation, plus any generation before me. That's a lot of people.
That's a ton of people.
Are going to give a lot of money to that franchise. But you saw another superhero movie as of recently.
Are we talking about
a little H2O boy? A little Wet Sandy?
Aqualad?
Aqua guy?
Oh no, Aqua Dude. I'm sorry,
Aqua Dude. Long hair.
Aqua My Man.
My Man. Little
That's
beach
literally
man.
That should have been what the movie was called. Is Aqua
Jason
My Man?
Momoa?
No, okay, we did. I did at least.
So
I saw
Aquaman.
Aquaman and Aquaman. James Wan's Aquaman specifically.
Which is an interesting sentence.
I wish that this could have been a full horror movie with Aquaman with Wan at the helm, just because there's some scenes.
Dude, I'm already scared of the ocean.
There is a
couldn't handle
scene
that.
that is going to murder your face then. Because he definitely brings that very horror tint to a certain scene at one point that is so good in my... So I really, really, really like this movie.
Yeah.
Like, a lot.
Which is not an uncommon opinion that has been rumbling, but people...
I'm starting to feel like an outlier, though.
Yeah, it's weird because, strangely enough, I'm pumped for this movie. that last trailer especially really got me excited. And so like I was looking to you when you went to go see it of like, hey, because you kind of know my sensibilities a little bit. Is this in line with what I think I would like?
I think so.
Yeah.
But
that
here's
kind of big
the other
adventure, classical like kind of feeling.
That's exactly what this movie is, and I think that that's the thing that isn't gelling with people. I'm a big fan of The Rocketeer. I don't make that any sort of hidden thing. The Rocketeer is my favorite comic book of all time.
Have no shame behind that.
No, The Rocketeer is my favorite comic book of all time. The Rocketeer is my favorite comic book movie of all time, and I know that that's a very outlier opinion, obviously.
I knew you loved it. I didn't know it was
It's just
that
so
deep-seated.
perfectly my sensibility.
Yeah.
My second favorite movie of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Rocketeer is the best
What's
Raiders
that?
of the Lost
Is
Ark.
that a franchise?
You're funny.
Because I love Last Crusade the most.
I know you do, but The Rocketeer is
Raiders of the Lost Ark, great movie, but
is one of the best Indiana Jones sequels we never got. Legitimately,
Interesting.
like if you
I
think
haven't
about
seen
it,
Rocketeer.
he's legitimately a guy during World War II who gets a jetpack, who's fighting Nazis. Like it's an
You already
Indiana
got
Jones
me
movie,
there.
and
All
Joe
right.
Johnston directed it.
And again, Jumanji, October Sky,
Captain America.
Which very underrated. in
Yeah,
my
I agree,
opinion.
and I think Jurassic Park 3, for all intents and
Has
purposes,
its moments.
it has. And remember, he got thrown into that movie. He didn't make it from the ground up.
And he's the only thing I have interested in the next Chronicles of Narnia movie.
Yeah, assuming it's still happening. I don't think it is.
Oh God.
Because was
Oh,
it
God.
Netflix that just got the rights to Narnia and they announced that they were doing a TV series?
Dude, there's so many like rights.
There's so
going
much
on.
going
It's-
on.
But
So-
back to Waterboy.
Anyway, Aquaman, it really does lean in on that pulpy serial vibe that I've been waiting to see
The
again
very
in the
classical
movie. Yeah.
kinda, yeah.
And we don't get a lot of that anymore because it's really not popular anymore.
Well, and Nolan came along and was like, no, we got to make it grounded. And
That's
we're
the thing.
just starting to get back to like, no, let's have fun with these
And
guys.
I think that now I kind of get where people were coming from with Venom, to be completely honest, because people bought into Venom so hard because it was this very just fun, laid back 90s superhero movie.
Throwback.
Yeah, and I didn't get it then, and I still may not if I rewatch it.
It's not a good movie. Like
Right. Aquaman's actually a good movie, but
Yeah.
it's also leaning on that same. It's Romancing the Stone. It's The Rocketeer. It's Indiana Jones. But it's also 2.5 hours, and it does feel like it a little bit. It could have been trimmed down.
Okay.
But what I will say is that for this movie, Juan swings for the fences.
Yeah.
He goes all out. I've never seen a movie quite like it.
Yeah.
I've never
In what
even
way?
in just the way that they visualize this underwater world. The best way to describe it is like watching Star Wars. You know when they go into
It's
the
like
cantina,
you kind of have to invent
yeah,
aspects of like how does an underwater like infrastructure kind of
right?
society.
And
Interesting.
it's just very different. I don't know if we'll ever even see anything quite like it again because
Aquaman
it's
2
also
is, like, right in the
very,
works.
very comic booky. Like, I mean, it wears the comic book nature of this film on its sleeve completely. It doesn't
Yeah.
even try.
Well, and it's interesting because like one, it's doing stupid well in China right now. And
Already.
on the heels, not on the heels, but like after looking at what Wonder Woman did, like being a very just kind of very in line with what kind of the ideology of what Wonder Woman is in terms of like what those comics meant, and looking at the reception that Shazam's getting in terms of like playing into like kind of the not pulpy, but like the just kind of like
Lighthearted
and what's it when you get to like experience something that you don't normally get to experience, that like kind of
It's wonder.
it's wonder, and it's like
It's wonder. That's what this movie is. It's wonder.
And
that's the thing. This whole reinvention of the DC universe is completely in a level of just wonder and fun and excitement and trying to go as far away from the Zack Snyder-ness as possible.
Dude, just the score alone in that last trailer, that bum bum, like just felt so bombastic and huge.
That's
and
the movie.
And like that, when I heard that, I was like, oh, they've locked into a tone and they're going for that. And if that's what it is, that's what I'm
There
into.
is so many cool things in this movie
I like
that
cool
I really
stuff.
like. And here's again, we talked about it last time on the podcast. I actually like the director's cut of BVS.
Yeah.
I really like Wonder Woman. I like Man of Steel.
Heck yeah.
Suicide Squad is the only one of these movies that I really don't like.
It's almost a movie.
Right. I even like parts of Justice League. It's not good, but I really like
Justice
parts
League
of
is
it.
a fun, fourth grade art experiment.
Sure. So I watched this. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
I was very excited.
Heck yeah.
And it totally took me to a place that I wasn't expecting in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So it was nice to enjoy myself in a DC movie where it didn't feel like it was really dour. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is I'm not sure how some of the DC fans are going to respond because I'm afraid that they're going to be upset that it's so light. And I mean, does it have dark moments? Yes, it's a James Wan movie. Of course it does.
But I like that it's a dark moment in terms of James Wan and not a dark moment in terms of like Zack Snyder DC universe of like
Right.
dark. Because when he does dark moments, it's very used purposefully to like contrast like light moments and to contrast like the rest of the film as opposed to like DC normally being like, no, we're dark because we're not, Marvel. We're not.
Someone brought up too that they left Aquaman being another male superhero with mommy issues in this version of the movie too, which I thought was kind of funny because it's kind of true. Is that Aquaman's mom has disappeared? He hasn't seen her since he was a kid and all this stuff.
Nicole Kidman.
I know, right?
Where'd you go?
But I will say too, I love the action sequences in this movie.
Oh my god!
James Wan, the way he moves cameras so freely is just so much fun, and it's just you're like, oh my god, like this is cool. Like it looks like a comic book panel.
It's not only that, but it's like just like I know the extended trailer came out and there was the long chase scene of like the one shot. I
wish that hadn't been in the trailer, to be honest with you.
And
I feel bad. I mean, I know it was made for Comic-Con, but
but it makes me appreciate the fact that this is and I appreciate that James Wan is doing this movie for the fact of like, this is a guy that has a very specific interpretation of action, and he's not trying to fit into a template. He's not trying to fit into the Zack Snyder, I love Wonder Woman, but not even the Patty Jenkins, like in terms of like what her interpretation of action is. This is James Wan of like, this is my version of what comic book action is. This is my version of just kind of, I just like that artistic interpretation, which might be kind of backhanded because Zack Snyder did that, but it just works better here. Just works better for this content. Works better for this tone.
I think if Snyder was willing to have a little bit more fun with the characters, we'd have a very different conversation on our hands, to be completely honest with you. That's kind of my thing right now is I'm worried that people are going to take that as a slight at what I'm saying, but it's not. It's not a slight at all. It should just be taken as...
I don't think Zack Snyder wanted to have the normal version of fun.
And again, I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. We're not taking shots at Snyder. I really like most of his movies.
Yeah.
So, do they have problems? Yes. I think all of his movies definitely have problems.
But again, he's an auteur. For me, I'm somebody who appreciates, like, unabashed, like, this is how I see art. This is how I see the world. And I look at the trailer for Aquaman, and I'm like, well, I look at those trailers, and I see James Wan being, this is my interpretation of this world. And I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
You've got a vision that I'm super pumped for.
Yeah, and he, like I said, he goes for it. He doesn't even try to hold back. And I actually really I was surprised. I liked Amber Heard a lot in the movie. I'm not normally a fan of her.
Yeah.
I thought she was quite good in the movie. I thought her and Momoa really start to lean on each other and really play off of each other well. Willem Dafoe is great.
Yeah.
Patrick Wilson is great. Obviously, he's a James Wan mainstay at this point between the Conjuring films and the Insidious films.
He's got that presence
He
about
does.
him of just like, you are, no matter what position you're in, you're confident that you're there. And
I rewatched A-Team last night. Have you seen that recently?
Not recently.
Okay. So, he plays a CIA agent.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's so good in that movie.
Yeah.
And
he's smarmy, and I love it.
That's what he's playing in this. He's very kind of smarmy. Like we haven't
seen
him.
As an Atlantean kind of like uppity.
Yeah, it's a little bit different
because
I'm so used to him being the very good guy for the most part recently, especially because of The Conjuring and Insidious. Like that's the characters he is. He's so not that.
But especially against like a Jason Momoa, just kind of broy, like, hey man, I'm just here to like do my thing, and he's like, well, I'm here to be the ruler. I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to see those two just.
He definitely kind of leans into like an Earl Flynn almost 1930s type villain-esque that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So
I
would
think
recommend Aquaman.
I definitely recommend Aquaman. I want to see an IMAX. Apparently, they definitely have IMAX sequences in the movie too, which I'm sure are mind-blowing to look at. So I'd be very much excited to check that out if we got a chance.
Heck.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. If you get the chance, please go see it.
I'm going to see it. And yeah, audiences out there, that comes with the PJ recommendation of go see it. On a scale of 1 to go see it, he says,
Go see it.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we are going to take a break. When we come back, we will talk a little bit about Mary Poppins Returns, and then we'll be done.
Bada bing, bada boom.
See you on the other side.
Boom.
We're the Wall Press Podcast. We talk movies, occasionally video games, not really so much.
Movies, like all art, are subjective. You're not always going to agree with someone on what they saw in a movie and then agree with what you saw in a movie. We want to make sure that everyone knows that that's okay.
By supporting our Patreon, you could get exclusive behind-the-scenes looks at some of our recordings.
We know money's hard. If you can't donate, that's perfectly fine. You can always help us out with likes, shares, and subscriptions.
You still have access to everything we make. Everything will be on our SoundCloud and YouTube at a later date. You know, because better late than never, right? And just like us, we're professionally unprofessional.
And we're back. Once again, my name is PJ Campbell. This is Patrick Hogue.
Hello. I was a little early on my first hello, so this is my
second hello. That I don't know how many times I'm going to have to go through this with you.
Just don't criticize me again like you do.
So we were talking before the show, and you were talking about when you were younger, you watched Mary Poppins so many times that you actually burned the tape out
Literally
when you were a kid.
wore out VHS tapes of Mary Poppins.
And yet you don't remember the movie?
It's funny because there are two other movies, Jumanji and Willy Wonka, that I also wore out VHS tapes of, and I remember those movies distinctly, but for whatever reason, I have memories as a child watching Mary Poppins, but it's not very formative in my brain as, like, I could quote every scene. It's not very formative in my brain of, like, oh, I remember where I was when I saw, you know, it here, or I saw it here. But all I know is that I have a reverence for it, and I have a nostalgia for it, and that there's a new one coming out, and it seems like it's appealing to that kind of ethereal side of me that's like, oh, wait, you do like Mary Poppins. I'm like, yeah, I do.
So how do you feel right now currently about the new Mary Poppins? I know you haven't seen it yet. Are you excited for it? What's the feel?
Yes. In terms of all of that, yes, I'm excited. Obviously it's tentative with any of these franchises that are coming back. Obviously it's...
Is it tentative because of Rob Marshall on top of it? I mean, be very honest.
No, not necessarily, because I do enjoy Chicago. I do enjoy, like, some of his work, but it's just the idea of that we've seen a lot of these franchises come back, and that they very much rely on the fact of, hey, you remember this aspect of the original? Hey, you remember this aspect of the original? Well, we're just going to do that again, but a bit flashier, without, like, kind of having an established kind of, like, thematic core as to why it's coming back. Like, you know, with Creed, like, last week that we were talking about, it very much justified its existence by, like, talking about why is it coming back? Why does it exist? And so with Mary Poppins, I'm like, I'm excited for it, but what story is there to tell with Mary Poppins coming back?
So I think that the one thing that this movie does really well, because I have seen the movie and we've been kind of talking about it. I know, I'm sorry. Is it finds a reason to do this again, but it's not necessarily. It's definitely a sequel, but it's more a sequel in the vein of like Jurassic World, where it's kind of starting back
there.
Yeah, and it's really. In a lot of ways, it's the nostalgia sequel done right, but I also understand the people who might think it's necessarily the nostalgia sequel done wrong.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is familiar to the original, but I think it also, at the same time, is very much its own thing, kind of beating to its own drum.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as similar as people are making it out to be.
Would you say it's trying to build its own mythology?
I would say it's building off the mythology.
Okay.
But it definitely helps if you've seen the original at times, just because, I mean, the main character are the Banks children grown up, which
I've heard of them.
yeah, I'm sure you have. And Rob Marshall's real hit and miss with me.
Yeah.
I think this is arguably the best movie he's done in a while.
Yeah.
Not only that, I think it's maybe the best nostalgia sequel or reboot or remake that Disney's kind of done.
I should say every trailer has gotten me excited for this film. Nothing has yet to like deter my kind of excitement. And also, I love Lin-Manuel Miranda. I'm on the Hamilton hype train. I'm on the Moana hype train. In the Heights, I think
he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think that Emily Blunt is absolutely fantastic in this.
Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, can I take your place? Okay.
But legitimately, the thing that makes me like this movie so much is that it's earnest. It very much reminds me of Paddington. And that just feel-good family film that
you got me.
Really just, it's wearing its heart on its sleeve like we were kind of talking about with Aquaman, but in a very different scenario.
It's okay with being like a party clown because it enjoys being a party clown to like entertain people.
It just wants to make you feel good. It wants to make you feel like even in the darkest times that things can be okay. And it feels very needed right now. And I know that doesn't sound necessarily like what people may want or expect.
No, but I know what you mean in terms of positivity, just kind of incarnate in the most physical way it can be, in terms of just like a positive movie. What I do remember of the first Mary Poppins is that there's some dark stuff in that movie dealing with like losing your home, losing your hope, losing your childhood.
They definitely do a lot of that in this one.
And so like just like a film that's really good at like what I know of the first Mary Poppins, remembering it is just it's a film that knows how to be positive in spite of all that, in spite of the weight of the world just kind of crashing down upon you.
And that's exactly what they're trying to do, which is what I like so much about the movie.
Yeah.
Is that I feel like, especially right now with the stuff going on in our country, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
With
I
the
heard
stuff,
there's a couple things going on.
Well, and then the stuff in Paris, and there's just a lot happening in the world, and sometimes it's nice to just have a reminder that, hey, there's still good in the world.
Yeah.
And that's really what this movie is trying so hard to do, is just go, hey, the world's not nearly as bad as you might think. Like, even in the darkest times, you're going to be okay. There's definitely a scene in the movie with Helen Mirren that I'm not a huge fan of, and I don't
Helen Mirren's in it?
Yeah.
What?
Or not Helen Mirren, Meryl Streep.
I was
Meryl
about
Streep.
to say,
sorry.
Man, they've really hidden that cameo.
No.
Like
Meryl Streep, very unnecessary.
Yeah.
Fun, sure. Didn't need to be in the movie.
See, it's interesting with Disney movies nowadays. Like, it's specifically Disney branded, like Disney created. Like, I did not like the new Beauty and the Beast. I enjoyed the new Jungle Book.
I like Jungle Book a lot more than I like Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, agreed. Lion King I look at with trepidation.
Jon Favreau, I can't do it.
Jon Favreau, yeah, and Cinderella, it's fine. A lot, but it's like what my fear is that you're creating a lot of content revolving around IPs and different pieces of pop culture that means so much to so many people.
Right.
If you create something that's just, even if it's great but not as good as what came before, does that dampen the legacy? Lion King is seen as this kind of titular example of what Disney animation can be. And, it's had sequels. It's had straight-to-DVD, like, interpretations. It has Broadway plays. But you're creating a live-action, reinterpretation of the original. My fear is, like, if it's not great, does that just kind of dampen the idea of what Lion King is to another generation that comes across?
Well, and I guess the thing is, though, is we also have to remember these aren't our versions anymore. We had ours.
That's true. Yep.
And that's the argument that I'm having to make now, and the one I'm starting to have to understand is that we have our versions of these stories.
They
just
still
like,
exist.
Just like our parents had their versions of their stories.
My parents worked in the field. They didn't know what movies were.
Because, remember, we haven't had another version of Dumbo really since the one from the 40s.
It's been
a long time. So this is the version for a completely different generation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the animated movies are timeless, but it's also okay now to do new versions of things, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, for better or worse, they're going to do it. Maleficent was the worst case scenario a lot of the time when it comes to these.
I kind of like Maleficent.
Okay, Alice in Wonderland is the worst case scenario.
I'll agree with you on that. It's I fully realize that I kind of sound like an old man of like, we've had the originals, why change anything? And it's like, no, that's a good point in terms of, I know that like Lion King broke like a ton of records for like trailer views and stuff, and there's a lot of kids nowadays that have not seen the original that finally get to see their interpretation of something that we hold so dear to our hearts. And like, I get a lot of people don't like Maleficent, but as someone who likes kind of weird creative endeavors, I appreciated the fact that they just kind of took a weird direction with it. Not super successful with like kind of how they did it, but I appreciated that Disney was just like, we're not going to remake Beauty or like Sleeping Beauty. We're going to do something a little different. But Beauty and the Beast is my worst fear with everything in terms of we're going to take the original and quote unquote modernize it. We're going to make it like fit with pop culture. We're going to make it like just kind of make it a very streamlined, digestible, like diet pill version of what the original was. And that's, maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on all the other properties. Like, I don't have that same fear with Mary Poppins, but the cynical side of me wants to be like, is that just kind of what, like, all these reinterpretations of these stories are going to be? Just kind of like the digestible version of The Little Mermaid, the digestible version of, Pocahontas.
Well, Lin-Manuel Miranda's doing the music for the new Little Mermaid, by the way.
Which, again, you get somebody like that who is proven to have reverence and to have passion and stuff. It's like, okay, optics being what they are, I'm excited.
Yeah, I think that's very important that we kind of look at it that way. And I think that really leads into also, we haven't talked about Bumblebee. And Bumblebee really leans into this same situation because, again, the Transformers movies from 10 years ago that Michael Bay started, actually like 11 or 12 years ago at this point, it's been a while.
God.
We're a different generation now, but we weren't the generation that got the G1 robots. I mean, I grew up watching the animated series, but I wasn't the initial ground floor Transformers fan.
And I've had really no experience with Transformers.
Which was what made Bumblebee such an interesting prospect, because now you're trying to go back to a generation that cared about it, while also trying to rewrite the sins maybe of the father, if you will.
To go back to some Creed 2 talk, but... And this is the thing I told you coming out of Bumblebee, is that with the Michael Bay films, I really never got the sense from those films of like, why would anybody be interested in Transformers as like an IP, as a franchise? Coming out of Bumblebee, I was like, oh, I get it. Oh, I don't have that reverence for Transformers, but without spoiling anything, like the opening and with a lot of the mythology that's built within that film, I got a sense of like the inherent joy that comes from like, probably from the old TV show, or it's just like having the toys and playing with them. I got a sense that this film did a good job of like being very emblematic of like, if you just had a box of Transformers and this is what your imagination came up with, like you could create something as visceral or as emotional or as, just kind of timeless as what kind of Bumblebee does a little bit.
Well, the smartest thing they ever did was, one, they moved as far away from the Bay stuff as possible, but they also leaned into Steven Spielberg's Amblin films and really E.T. especially. And and that's the real crutch of this film that works so well, is that it still has problems. These Transformers films have not been flawless, but this one was immensely more enjoyable than all the others. It was the most fun I've had with one of these movies since the original Transformers movie.
Which, and I feel bad for Bumblebee because I feel like a lot of the reviews are doing that in terms of like, in comparison to the other Transformers, or like,
To be fair, it's got like a 90% right now on Rotten Tomatoes.
But a lot of the reviews are kind of being like, it's good because, what we got before was bad. And it's like, no, it's good on its own. And like, Haley, what I was really appreciative and like, one, getting the obvious out of the way, Travis Knight, the director who did Cuba and the Two Strings, brings his magic to this film in terms of like
he's a real fan of this franchise. You can
he's
really
a fan
feel
of
it.
this franchise. He's also just a good storyteller in terms of, again, what I like love about this film is Haley Steinfeld, who is just a star.
She's delightful in
She's
this.
delightful. She's a able to carry a film on her shoulders like nobody's business, but the kind of the emotional genius behind this film is like kind of taking what Bumblebee is like in all the other films as this kind of runt of the litter, putting him into this film and just kind of being very emblematic of like that emotional core to that character, and like applying it to Haley Steinfeld and having them have that relationship of these two kind of like disfranchised like characters from like who they were before. There's such this emotional just kind of like complexity to Bumblebee. It's not the greatest film I've ever seen. It's not one of the best films I've seen this year, but I really do think it's getting kind of underserved in a lot of the reviews of like, I teared up in this film. And like that's not easy for me to do. And by the end, I was super satisfied with like where it left me. Was I blown away with like where it went story-wise? No. Was I blown away with like kind of like how mind-blowing like the plot structure or like the action sequences, which are great, but not mind-blowing. But I left with such like a very satisfied emotion, like experiencing such an emotionally fulfilling movie. I was telling you this earlier, it's that Bumblebee is not a Christmas movie, but it is the perfect movie to watch during Christmas, because I feel like when we're talking about those old Amblin films, it is the perfect movie that can just like satiate you in terms of like just like I want to feel empathetic towards somebody, and I want to feel empathetic towards somebody I want to root for. And I feel like Bumblebee doesn't get enough credit for making you care about a character that nobody gave a crap about, and introducing completely new characters that you care about.
Yeah. I will say the one bummer I have right now, and I told you immediately when we walked out, is that we all knew it was supposed to be more like a reboot than a prequel.
Yeah.
But there's one thing in particular that they leave in that I wish they didn't name the character.
Yeah.
Because naming that one character immediately links you back to the Bay series, and it's really frustrating for me when it's clearly trying so hard to get away from it.
Yeah.
That it just really, really kind of hurt for me.
The thing is that if going forward they were just completely like quote unquote retcon that, I really hope no one would care, because I think the film is strong enough by itself to that.
Oh,
like,
it totally is. I had a
away with
great
not.
time watching it.
Yeah.
The action sequences are far and away some of the best in this series at this point.
Which, again, love Michael Bay's action, but Travis Knight.
It was nice to actually really, really tell what was going on in the movie. And I feel like that's a fair assessment. Like, yes, Bay's action sequence... Dude, even in the second one, there's some of those sequences, it is hard to tell what's going on. It's just metal on metal.
I think it's hard to tell what's going on because there's no emotional thread to go through
Well,
it.
that's the other
The filmmaking craft in and of itself, I appreciate. I think Travis Knight, like, what he does is that he has great action on top of, like, holy crap, Haley Steinfeld, get out of there. Bumblebee, please, like, win this, like, fight. Like, you have those stakes on top of the brilliant filmmaking that's behind this person who just knows how to construct like this elevated like action scene. He has those emotional stakes that just the Michael Bay films don't. Where he, I will say Michael Bay is a very talented technical action director.
Well, he's been one since he came on the scene. The problem is that he doesn't always find the right vehicle for it. 13 Hours, though, is arguably the best film he's made since maybe The Rock.
Still haven't seen either of those films.
You've never seen The Rock?
Yeah, it's on
Seriously?
Yeah, I know. I'm a disappointment.
That's shocking to me. Because The Rock
that
is...
one, out of
all
the films...
Maybe it's because... So
Young
I have a
Ones
whole
too,
story about The Rock in like my childhood.
Yeah.
So it's been a big part
There's
of my
a
life.
deep lore
there's
history.
a deep history for me in that movie.
Copy that.
And I'm a little surprised, especially considering it played on things like TNT all the time. But you're also from the mythical land of Canada, so I guess I shouldn't be too
Hey, man,
surprised.
we were watching what's a Canadian show? Yakety Yak, I think was Canadian.
Don't Talk Back.
Don't Talk Back. Yakety Yak.
But I did enjoy Bumblebee a lot.
So did I.
I'm really glad that it actually worked out as well as it did.
Yeah, I hope
could
it
not
makes
have.
money.
It could have been a disaster.
It's the idea of a Bumblebee spinoff, like it shouldn't work. It shouldn't. Optics being what they are, and I'm quite the optics person. Like a Bumblebee spinoff, at least from the get-go, being from the Michael Bay franchise, should not be something that anybody has any remotely interest in. And I'm here saying, like, it's a good movie. Go support it, because go tell Paramount, like, hey,
we want more of these.
Make more movies like these. This is, and especially during Christmas, if you want to feel like good and emotional and have like a nice family time, Bumblebee is the perfect movie for that.
It's surprising because Mary Poppins is too. I think those two movies, more than Aquaman, are going to really fight for a very similar audience.
And I will even put Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse.
What a good month for like.
It's one of the best months in a while, and I'm really kind of happy with all the choices that we actually have.
I just hope they're all successful.
That's the real
I just want
question.
Everybody to be happy.
Don't we all? All right, guys. So with that, we are going to wrap up this episode of the PJ Campbell Show. Last week, I actually forgot to add something that I probably should have.
How could you?
You can find the podcast on Podbean. It's under the PJ Campbell Show. You can subscribe to it there. You can also find us on Spotify and iTunes. That's the real kicker. Go to Spotify. I don't know if you can leave reviews on Spotify. I don't think you can. You might be able to rate stuff.
That is above my pay grade.
But I know on iTunes, if you go and subscribe to us, you can also rate and review the show. And that's very important, because if you like the show, we'd really like you to rate and review it so that other people can find us. The more you do that, the more people find us, and that makes us feel good.
It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy that just leads to...
Look, if you want more podcasting, essentially. Exactly. That's all it is. If you want more podcasting, that's the thing you need to do. If you guys tell us that you don't want us to do this anymore, we'll
then,
quit.
Ouch, I'm kind of emotionally hurt.
Well, maybe we won't quit, but yeah, I mean, we'll Jay and Silent Bob, find the people like they did in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and go find them.
Movie I still need to.
Man, you were just killing me today, man.
What a note to leave this one on. Just disappointment on disappointment.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Seen, that one, The Goonies. It's a Sandlot. I know it's a Sandlot.
Okay, I was gonna say
it was a bit.
It's a bit. It's a bit. That's fair.
One.
But really, please head over to iTunes, head over to Podbean, subscribe, leave comments. We really want to keep this show going, and it's not without the help of you guys. It's very important. Please help us help you, or whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
Hogue, where can everyone find you online?
The 3 places you can find me: Twitter at hogue.filmmaker. That's HOGUE. Don't get it wrong. You can find me at Pat the Canadian, all one word, on Instagram. And you check out my Vimeo page, where I have a lot of my short films that I've made. I want to be a filmmaker, so all my cool stuff is on there. Just type in Patrick Hogue, again, HOGUE.
And of course, you guys can find me across all the social media platforms at PJ_Campbell. You can also find me writing at the Movie Trivia Schmodown website, triviasd.com. Please watch the Schmodown Spectacular 3 that is coming up right before Christmas. Hogue and I will actually talk about it on the next episode. We're very excited about it. It's really, really great. Please head to Collider, where you guys can, rate and review and all of that for that as well, because the more you guys go and check out the Movie Trivia Schmodown, the better off we all are, because there's a lot of passion put into it by those people behind the scenes. Please support them. And guys, you can also find my reviews over at SoCalThrills.com, and find us here on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, wherever it was you found us. Thank you so much for listening and your continued support. It means the world to us. And we will see you next time, where we talk about whatever the hell comes to mind.
Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
Ta-da.
Bye.
Please leave this office.
Do we get any sort of souvenir?
Get out of my office!
I'll be back.
I gotta pay.
Throw me a frickin' bone here. I'm the boss. Need the info.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie.
Heavy is the head that eats the crayons. I'm gonna take a nap. See you in 10 hours.
Dude, I almost had you. You almost had me. You never had me.
I like your style, dude.
End of line.